present. We will not this evening because of some complications with the court reporter's company. So we have the ability to make a motion to proceed without a court reporter. And the court reporter will make minutes from the video that's being taken. We are streaming. Additionally, we could move instead to continue the 2 public hearings if that's what the commission decides. I would suggest we proceed with the 2 public hearings. I would need somebody to make a motion. It's section 18201B. So if someone would move to proceed without a court reporter present, and the transcript would be made from the recording, and also Commissioner Schlinsky will be taking general minutes as well. Is there a motion for that?
I'll make that motion.
It's the motion from Commissioner Orlowski. Is there a second?
Second.
It's second from Hofstra. Any questions or comments on that motion? We'll take a roll call vote on that. Hofstra?
Yes.
Jackson?
Yes.
Case?
Yes.
Ludke?
Yes.
Orlowski?
Yes.
Romano?
Yes.
Schlinsky?
Yes.
So since the court reporter isn't present, and even when they are, we want to try to minimize crosstalk, and we want to try to minimize sidebars at the dais. And so I would ask that anybody that's going to speak, please do so from a microphone, and do not talk over each other to the extent that we can.
Question.
Yes?
What about swearing in?
I will do that.
Okay.
Yes. So, anyone who plans to speak tonight on any agenda item, I would ask that you stand now and raise your right hand, and I'll get you sworn in. Right. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you are about to give this evening is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Right. Thank you. Okay, and so when you come up to speak, please give your name and address for the record. Now we'll get on to regular business here. We have approval of minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes of, the date's not here, the last regular meeting?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from January 13th.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion from Jackson and a second from Orlowski. Any questions or comments on the motion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is approved. So the way these public hearings will work, the first 2, we will start with staff input. We'll move to presentation of the petitioner. Then we will take public participation and questions. If you have questions on either of the 2 items listed under 3A or 3B, that would be, you would come up on each of those agenda items and state your name and address for the record. Then we will have questions from the commission. I will closing comments from the petitioner, and then discussion amongst ourselves and a motion if appropriate this evening. We're going to handle the item 4A slightly differently. We will, because that is not a public hearing, it's just a general informational meeting and a preliminary review by our commission. So we will handle that, the process for that when we get there. So with that, the first item of business will be petition PZ 220002 for 24 East St. Charles Road, a special use for drive-through in the MX3 district, variation for parking lot perimeter. Whenever you're ready. Well, I guess I should introduce our interim director here, Ellen. She's been great over the last few weeks. I've been working with her 6 weeks or so now.
It is 6 weeks. Thank you. Let me get to the beginning. I will say that, where's the home button on this? I will say that the applicant also has a PowerPoint, but I have prepared one myself. So
okay.
Here we go. So good evening. I'm Ellen Weber. I'm serving as the interim community development director for the village. I'll be here until such time that Consuelo Argalice's replacement is hired. I have 30 years experience in community and economic development, variety of communities. I retired last year, and I'm doing the temporary work here and enjoying it actually very, very much. So this evening before you is the second case that came in this year, and it is for a drive-through in the MX district on St. Charles Road. And I've spoken with the chairman. I believe that this may actually be one of the first projects in the MX district since the new ordinance was put in place, the new code in 2018. It's a small site. It's just 0.2 acres, and it's just across from the Jewel Osco to the northeast of us, and it is zoned MX3 now. Walgreens is to the west with a drive-through as well. The site is pretty heavily concrete. Here's a picture of what's there now, and it's a lot of parking and very little green. So the proposal is a drive-through, and you can see that some variations would be needed to put the drive-through here. Now, if this was not the MX district, it would meet the code requirements. But because it's in MX, it needs a special use. So that's why we've got this here before you. And the MX district drive-through requirements would put the drive-through lane in the rear yard, and the window in the rear yard, and the canopy in the rear yard. And it's just not possible given the narrowness and the size of this site. But there are some benefits from putting it here on the west side. Also, they're asking for a parking lot perimeter landscaping relief, and there has been a lot of landscaping planned for this site, so staff could easily recommend the approval of this. Up at the end on the left, you can see the red oval. That would be perimeter landscaping up against the wall of the loading dock of Walgreens, because the code requires screening of parking spaces. And I do understand that this is relatively new for our code, putting in parking lot perimeter landscaping. On the right hand, the east side along Cornell, that red oval, a 7-foot bed is required, and they've been able to accommodate a 5-foot bed. And again, it's the width of the property. The proposal would be to demolish the building. It's 1,680 square feet. And the new owner would like to put in a new quick serve restaurant. There would be right turn only onto St. Charles Road for the exit. He does not have a tenant identified, and he's seeking approval of the drive-through to help him with his marketing. The owner is a doctor here in the community already. I want to note that the building elevations that came in meet the code, but they're still kind of conceptual without a tenant. And I've been clear to the applicant that the actual elevation would be approved at time of the building permit and would have to meet all the zoning requirements for the MX district. So these MX districts are form-based, and rather than just merely giving you bulk regulations for setback height, density, they also have design elements in them. So the concept plans had to be reviewed against the design elements. Looking at the comprehensive plan, I thought this was also interesting, and I wanted to point it out that St. Charles Road is designated for corridor mixed use. In the comprehensive plan, which you probably know is going to be updated hopefully within the next year or two, this area is considered corridor mixed use, and that does match with the zoning. The plan also recommends consideration of a road diet, which would reduce St. Charles Road from 5 to 3 lanes. And those that have lived here a long time have seen the transformation of the road as it's gotten wider and wider to accommodate the automobile. And taking it down to 3 lanes is a concept that provides a complete street, makes it more friendly to pedestrians and bicyclists. This village does not have money to do the study for this right now, nor to build it, but around 2030 the road will be up and eligible for federal STP funding, and engineering says, you know, they think that there'll be interest to do this then. I just wanted to put it out there so that this concept doesn't get lost. Looking at the zoning, a restaurant is a permitted use in the MX district. The building as proposed does meet facade, roof, building type, setbacks, height, uses, and design. Each of these MX districts, there are 4 different building types in the new code, and each district has 1 or 2 or 3 of them, you know, that are appropriate, deemed appropriate. As drawn, the restaurant would have approximately 30 seats, and it does provide the 10 parking spaces that would be required, 7 of them on the lot and 3 on the street, which is permitted through our code. There is a proposal also, if you saw in the drawing, for some outdoor seating. It's not enough to trigger the requirement for more parking because it doesn't exceed 10% of the indoor floor area. The drive-through is drawn, okay, let me back up. Figure 438 is how it is in the code to have a drive-through in the MX district with it to the rear, and you can see it's just a wide lot, and this is not a wide lot. The drive-through that they've drawn does meet the stacking requirements. It has 2 cars between the order window and the ordering board, and it has stacking for 5, but the variance here would be the placement of the drive-through in the window. And I do note that placing the window and the canopy structure in the rear yard would have put all of the ingress and egress traffic out onto Cornell. And so it is a benefit to have the exit coming out onto St. Charles. In the beginning, before I was here, staff did meet with the applicant, and you can see on the right, this was their early concept plan, how it would look if they put it in the rear. And there's less parking, and again, you've got both points of egress on Cornell. On the left, you've got what they've proposed before you this evening. There is a rear entrance also planned for the building there, and that's why the wide sidewalk is there to the north of the building. I've referenced the parking lot landscape variation, the 2 ovals again. They've provided significant landscaping, and for that reason, I was very comfortable recommending to you the landscape variation. They've got a 30-foot buffer to the home to the north. Right now, you've got parking all the way, and they've got a 6-foot fence. And then you can see the landscape beds at the southeast corner and some landscaping to the west of the drive-through. Again, significantly more green that's there. This is the length. I had to flip it 90 degrees, but this is the length of Cornell. You can see the landscaping. Those are 2 bike racks there in the center right above the word Cornell, and then the little patio area. And then to the right of that is the 5-foot area with bushes proposed. They've really put some good species in their plan. Obviously, you can't read it, but I just wanted to illustrate that it's a very healthy landscape proposal. So looking at the findings of fact, I don't know, Mr. Chairman, what's your history been? Do you need me to go through these? Have you all read them? The special use is an activity that is allowed in the district as a special use. To provide the drive-through is a matter of public convenience. To put a new restaurant, do you want me to go through them?
I don't think you need to.
Okay.
Right? We've got them available in the report.
So for those in the audience, this is what the commission will review the proposal against, is that they've met these standards with their proposal for the special use and then for the variation. And the big thing on the variation request is that it's not just, they're not asking for it just to make more money at a site. There's more reason than that. There's a hardship, and in this case, it's the size of the lot and the width of the lot. They just can't do it. So there are public benefits, so staff was supportive of the request. It does meet the comprehensive plan goal for land use. It does improve the sight lines for the patrons exiting Walgreens. Once you've moved that building back, they'll be able to see the westbound St. Charles traffic easier. Lighting requirements are met, meaning that they won't cast out onto the neighboring properties. All the fixtures are downlit. An aging building was going to be demolished. It would be. There'll be a screened fence landscape buffer between the home to the north. The curb cut on Cornell is eliminated. Drive-through egress would be onto St. Charles Road, not Cornell. They are offering the bike parking and a pedestrian amenity with the little patio. The landscape plan meets the intent of the code, and another requirement in our application process, Cane DuPage soil conservation is indicated. No need for any review here. So I've given you a sample motion. I think we can come back to that after you let the applicant speak?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. And we have several gentlemen here from the applicant, and I will queue up their presentation. Okay.
And if I could just get you guys to state your name and address for the record as you come up to speak, and then just keep in mind that court reporter will be taking a transcript off the recording, so try to be in front of the mic when it's your turn to speak. Thanks.
Excuse me. Thank you. My name is David Kennedy. I do have a cold, so I hope I can speak all right tonight, but 35 East Wacker Drive in Chicago.
Thank you.
So we're happy to be here tonight. It's actually kind of exciting for us to be, I guess, the first proposal in this new MX3 district. And one of the things we like about this is because there's design elements put into the district regulations, it puts us in a situation where we have parking behind the building forms a street wall, and we've also used some of the setback requirements to add landscaping, as Ellen pointed out. So we think it is a proposal that we hope can be approved by the commission. Just the aerial site view, as you know, this was in the packet showing the surrounding community. There's a location map, obviously closer in. I think we all know that the site now is about 95 to 98% impervious. The large parking lot extends almost all the way to the north property line, and it's built out east to west. There's 2 curb cuts on Cornell, and we're going to eliminate one of them. We don't need those 2 on Cornell, so we're actually adding to the streetscape on the east side. Site plan north is actually to the right here. We had to turn it to get a little bit better image for you, but I think you got a pretty good introduction from Ellen. Is really what I wanted to add here, just a couple of things, was what we tried to do was by having the single ingress egress on Cornell, we've added some streetscape in the parkway, and we're also using this because the curb cut's gone. We're using this as a way for a little outdoor patio with a screen wall to the sidewalk to be used by patrons of the restaurant. The driveway comes through and the stacking comes back to the west side. And as you know, we work with staff with our preliminary concept, and I think everyone, fire, police, planning, all kind of agreed that this was a better scheme for the site. The MX3 district does ask you to either go to 0 to 10 feet on the front yard, and I think we have 0 to 10 feet on the side yard, the corner side yard. We actually went to 10 here for 2 reasons. One is it gives us a little bit better sight line, as was pointed out, as you exit either from Walgreens to the west or from our site as they exit on St. Charles. This is a right turn only. Obviously, it's not a full access intersection. And then we've also added some landscaping here that would be low enough to see for sight lines, landscaping along the east side to really give us a little bit better sight line too from people that are traveling southbound in Cornell making those turns. So we really meet the sight triangle for people coming up to the stop sign. So overall, we just think it's an enhanced site plan. Trash is away from the street, screened again by landscaping. We haven't done our full civil engineering yet, but we will design the site so that stormwater will not exit the site to the north. We'll keep it on the site, contain it, and do what we need to do to meet the code and really be a good neighbor. You know, the 6-foot fence and landscaping back here in the buffer, we think is a good buffer between us and the residential property. Before I move on, I just want the owner is here. He's a local doctor in the community, so I just have him say a few words, please.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mohammed Samiruddin. I am in the community for the last 13 years. I'm a family practitioner. My address is 622 North Addison Road in Villa Park, Aziz Medical Center. And I bought this property, and I really, I've been in the community for like 13 years, very vested in Villa Park. See a lot of community patients, a lot of people from the community. So when I got this property, I really thought that this would be, a place where a new development can come in. And again, a lot of thoughts into this area and a lot of interest, which I thought spoke to a lot of people. And suggestion was a quick service restaurant or a coffee shop drive-through. And again, that will enhance the community. Again, a lot of the thought was to have something new developed. And we spoke to a lot of people who are interested in getting some kind of a new development in this. And again, they are looking at this. And a national tenant was a few national tenants have interest in this, but again, they're looking to see how this project goes and if the approval happens. So I hope that this we are headed towards a good direction here, and we get a good site. Right now, it's an eyesore, the building. So I hope we get a good development here. Yeah. All right. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
This is the architectural plan is also in your packet. I just want to point out here that we do think a lot of quick service restaurants will have limited seating. We're showing 30 seats. There could be fewer, but we're not proposing any more. We don't have a tenant yet, but this is our proposal because we really want to make sure that we can adequately serve this restaurant with those seats without a parking variation. That's our proposal. So the seats really, we also have a fair amount of glass that I'll show you in a minute, the elevations. South elevation facing St. Charles, a lot of glass at the entry door off here for any foot traffic that would come in. Canopy on the east elevation facing Cornell, another lot of glass at the seating counters and booths. Masonry building, we're meeting the requirements of the MX3 district in terms of the height, minimum height requirements, and we're trying to do something that architecturally fits into the neighborhood and is enhancing the site. The north elevation, obviously glass at the entrance. In the west elevation, there's not much other than the drive-through. Very few openings on the west side facing Walgreens. We just did one concept 3D view of the site facing, from the corner of Cornell and St. Charles. Again, it's, masonry with some stone banding, a lot of glass facing south, large canopy at the entry, and a articulated cornice on top with glass facing the patio and landscaping on the east side. You can see in the background there the fencing, landscape buffer, and here's the exit out to St. Charles. With that, I'm going to turn this over to our traffic consultant.
Good evening. My name is Stephen Corcoran. I'm Director of Traffic Engineering at Erickson Engineering Associates out of Grays Lake, Illinois. So you have a traffic study in your packet that I completed. For that traffic study, we went out and had traffic counts done at Cornell and St. Charles Road, both during the morning and evening rush hour, as well as the Saturday afternoon peak period. And then, obviously, we're going through a pandemic, and we found everywhere around Chicago, traffic volumes are lighter than normal. So we looked at some historic IDOT counts for St. Charles Road, and we took those existing counts and increased them by 34%. So our study is based on a typical pre-pandemic condition. We looked at two different land uses on the site. One is a typical fast food restaurant, and then a second is it could be a coffee donut shop with a drive-through. So the top table there, I'm not going to go through the numbers. I can't even read them from here. But we looked at the coffee shop generated the most traffic compared to our regular fast food restaurant. So I use those numbers to do my analysis. If a fast food goes in there, things will work a little bit better based on that. A couple things to keep in mind for both uses. Number one, a good percentage of traffic is what we call pass-by traffic. Someone's driving down the street, they're on their way from home to work, and they pass by here and they make a stop to get a cup of coffee if it's a coffee shop. The same thing at lunchtime, they drive by and they want to get a lunchtime meal from a fast food, they stop. So we're really not adding necessarily all new traffic to St. Charles Road. Some of that's the existing traffic that now has another opportunity to shop at a different type of location. And then the other thing we want to note is basically of those volumes, around 2/3, 60% of the traffic going through this either site, or I'm sorry, for either land use through the site is going to be using a drive-through. So we then took the higher numbers, assigned it to the road system, then we also obtained traffic projections from the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning to increase the traffic to the year 2028, which is approximately 5 years after this thing theoretically can be built. Again, that's dependent on when the tenant comes in. And did some capacity analysis for Cornell, St. Charles, for the Walgreens access, for our new access onto St. Charles, as well as the new Cornell access. The second table on there, I'm not going to go through either, but this shows all good levels of service and minimal delay for the different vehicles leaving the driveways as well as leaving, turning on or off Cornell during the different peak hours. The other thing I wanted to touch on tonight was I understand there's a concern about cut-through traffic. The unique thing about this site compared to most any commercial site is because most of our traffic is exiting or using the drive-through, this site plan basically forces the majority of the traffic exiting the site to turn right onto St. Charles Road, and they don't have an opportunity to potentially turn north on Cornell and cut through the neighborhood. So by the site design, that helps regulate that cut through. The other issue, again, is always for the people driving down St. Charles Road, they want to get back on St. Charles Road. So we anticipate very little cut through traffic. We did assign a couple cars going north and south, or to the north on Cornell, but we would represent, we would think, people from the neighborhood going to use this site. And that's the end of my marks for the moment. Turn it back to Dave. Did I go too far?
The other things that are in your packet tonight, I just want to briefly point out that staff allowed us to do this special use without doing a full engineering, but we did look at some things that were brought to our concern from the Public Works Department was the grading and sidewalk and pedestrian path that runs east-west in front of the building. So we did work that out. We got some grading done, some spot elevations done, so we got that worked out to their satisfaction because that was the only concern that they thought in terms of grading out the site once we get to the point of final design. We also have a photometric plan that was in your packet. I think, obviously no one can see this here, but we will have essentially 0 foot candles at the north property line. We have only 1 pole light on the entire property to light the entire site, and the rest of the lighting is done by wall-mounted fixtures on the building. And we have proper cutoffs and downlights so that we're not causing any kind of visual disturbance to any of the neighbors. And one last thing I think we want to point out and actually talk to the commission about is that we understand staff is supporting this and we're very happy for that. One thing that we want at least the commission to consider is we feel that there's more potential for success if the petitioner is allowed to have a coffee shop in. I know there's more traffic, but I think one of the things we're considering is that the larger national chains, the site's too small. So by self-selection, we think it will be a restaurant. If it is a coffee shop, it would probably be a local, regional, not national, most likely, potentially having less traffic than the nationals would. So we think that that would be beneficial if the owner has the opportunity to be less restrictive on the use. So we'd like to at least to have that out there for discussion today. Thank you.
Any other comments, or is that?
Because we don't have a court reporter, would you give your name, your full address, your spelling, everything in order of which you spoke to help her at home? I didn't hear everybody.
Can we have somebody take that down, maybe?
Well,
Do you have business
I
cards?
just thought she'd hear the voice.
Okay.
So.
David Kennedy. David Kennedy is Kennedy. Excuse me. The address is 35 East Wacker Drive, Chicago.
Mohammed, Mohammed, Samiruddin, and 622 North Addison Road, Villa Park.
Stephen Corcoran, Corcoran, 145 Commerce Drive, Grace Lake, Illinois.
Great. Thank you. All right. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this agenda item this evening? Okay. One at a time. Just you can come up to this podium, state your name, spell your last name, and give your address for the record, and try to keep it to about 3 minutes, to the degree that you can.
Good evening. My name is Julie Wozniak, and I reside, Wozniak, W-O-Z-N-I-A-K, and I reside directly north from the proposed property at 18 North Cornell and Villa Park. I am a 27-year resident of the property, and I am a 50-year resident of Villa Park. I object to this proposal in so many ways. First being the amount of traffic it is going to bring to our community. You have entering only from Cornell, so people are going to come from Oak and Elm and so forth down Cornell to enter the property. They're also going to be entering the property from St. Charles, which I think is a major concern, especially with the amount of accidents that are at this intersection. The property is way too small for a drive-through. And while it looks great and everything, and it will bring value, I'm sure, to that property, I believe it's going to take away value from my property. I take on a lot of stormwater on my property, which has eroded my foundation and my driveway and flooded my basement on several occasions. This property next door, being Walgreens, is a monstrosity. I've had to fight with the village time and time again about the stormwater in my yard. It's eroded away all my mulch, and this money is only coming out of my pocket. It's eroded my property. The amount of garbage on my property from these properties around me is a concern. Where the dumpster is located is a concern. The 6-foot fence is a concern because you cannot see people coming down the sidewalk exiting my property. It's a one-car driveway. There's no way for us to protect the children and the kids when we're pulling out of there until the last minute. The light on the property, the garbage, the tables in the rear, my bedrooms all line my driveway. So you're going to put tables back there, which are going to bring people back there, and I'm sure teenagers back there, and a lot of nuisances and ruckuses. And I have to live in that house. I've paid my taxes, and I've really done my time in putting up with Walgreens. And if you go to that property today, you'll see how it's underkept and the amount of garbage that I have to pick up every year. The rodents, the raccoons, the possums, the squirrels, they bring garbage out of that dumpster and set it in my light fixtures, in my cushions, all in my backyard, which is not healthy for my animals. I have 2 dogs on that property and lots of chocolate. I'm also concerned about the damage to my property when the demo and build is being done. I had damage to my property when Walgreens was built, and it's not that close to my property as this building. I'm concerned about the hours. I'm concerned about the graffiti. I'm concerned the amount of people that a drive-through and at best a coffee shop is going to bring to that property. We have a coffee shop right across the street, Dunkin' Donuts. We have another one on Roosevelt Road. We have another one on North Avenue. I think we have enough. Time and time again, restaurants have gone up along St. Charles and they've failed. I don't think this should be a property for a restaurant. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, whoever's next.
Hi, Donna Noxon, Noxon, saying forward and backwards and upside down, it's a palindrome. My only concern for that property is I see that they have the right turn out of the property. If you are picking up your prescription from west to east through the drive-through, when you come out at that far east entrance, I ask that we make that a right turn also, so you don't have the right traffic turning and the people coming out of Walgreens turning left. So I just ask that coming out of that last driveway of Walgreens, you make that a right turn also.
Thank you.
Donna, can you give your address, please?
1037 South Rand.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Loading dock, but this is where they pick up their prescription. So this.
Mr. Chairman, Dr. Mohammed, did he leave? Okay. Other representatives from the Development Commission. My name is Darren McCardle. I am a 50-year resident of Villa Park and a 50-year resident of Cornell Avenue in Villa Park.
Can you give your address, please?
Yes, 27 North Cornell.
Thank you.
So I'm pretty much in the middle of the block. So I just want to come here and kind of, say my piece about what potentially could be coming. So it sounds good. Here to Stay was originally the Cornell snack shop. So we remember that as a kid. I like the idea, but the traffic really will be a concern. So I want to bring to your attention the realities of having lived on that street for 50 years. As a kid, teenager, as an adult, and now homeowner. Cornell is the avenue, the thoroughfare to get to the Villa Park train station. So we see there is traffic in the morning to the train station, and I know it's pandemic. There have been fewer people traveling by train to get there. But in the non-COVID years, we see a lot of traffic in the morning. We see a lot of traffic in the evening. And I'm concerned about the bottleneck that will create at St. Charles and Cornell Avenue as people are coming back from the train station using Cornell Avenue as they have historically done to turn right onto St. Charles Road heading for Elmhurst. Two, we get a lot of cut-through traffic. I'm not sure that cut-through, not through the structure of the restaurant. We get a lot of traffic where someone is approaching Ardmore Avenue in St. Charles and the light is turning yellow. So they will cut down Cornell, down to Elm, and then take a quick left and then proceed down to Ardmore Avenue. So they avoid the light by coming down our street. So, looking at the property, I did not get a chance to see this development plan before tonight. So I'm just kind of going off my notes of what it was like when Here to Stay was there, which was a haircuttery place. There were cars, the employees would park on the street on Cornell. And for traffic that proceeded from the train station to St. Charles, you would have car. The street would be filled with cars looking to go right while the business was in operation. We see a lot of cars that do not stop at the stop sign. It's the residents of our block would consider it almost to be a yield, where they roll right through to get to the train, to make that left towards Ardmore Avenue to avoid the light. So that should be a real consideration. Two, we're a family block. About 20–25% of the homes on the 050 block of Cornell Avenue have kids between the ages of 2 and 17. So we have young families. We've historically used our front yards to, just kind of celebrate, to be out in front playing with our kids. Years gone by, we played, kickball in the street, softball, frisbee golf, so that increased traffic would be a concern for me as a dad, as a father, and even for my own daughter. Let's see. That pretty much sums up my concern. At the intersection of Cornell and Elm, that's also a stop for the Willowbrook High School, the middle schools in Villa Park, elementary schools, kids that receive busing. We also have, special education buses that stop. And my concern is the increased car traffic, will just come into conflict with those buses. I'm a teacher, so we hear about people that blow by school buses with the stop sign out, the red lights flashing. So, I'm just concerned that this is going to lead to some greater issues. Two, if you've ever been in Villa Park on St. Charles Road about dinner time, you know that cars approaching the light, the intersection at Ardmore and St. Charles, will be backed up to Illinois Avenue. So if you have cars coming down Cornell from the train station, and you have, at busy times, cars that are almost 2 blocks back waiting for the light, and then you have a business which puts traffic into a right turn position only out of that restaurant, you're going to create, it's going to be a significant bottleneck. We are going to realize the impact of that. I'm not against the business being there, but sensibility, I'm not sure that a drive-through under these considerations would be appropriate. We would like to see something there. The business that was there was a good business. They were a good neighborhood partner. I would imagine that Dr. Muhammad, you know, we'll find someone who is a good partner with us in the neighborhood, and that some of these concerns that Ms. Wozniak kind of stated, you know, would be addressed, and that's it. So I thank you.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
How you doing? John Drogas, 29 North Cornell Avenue.
Could you spell your last name, please?
Drogos. I feel like overall I thought the plan is pretty well put together. I think bringing the building back, setting it back is a huge benefit. I know it creates a lot of blind spots as the current building is. That said, I think more discussion needs to be had with the adjacent neighbor that's directly behind them, as obviously I don't think enough discussion has been with Ms. Wozniak, as I think a lot of her concerns may be able to be resolved with the design. I feel like the traffic study is well done enough where I think that there shouldn't be an issue, especially if the coffee shop's not a Starbucks, if it's a small coffee shop or small restaurant. I feel like as long as it's not McDonald's or, you know, Shake Shack or something like that, I would hope it wouldn't be overwhelmed. And I know traffic studies are usually pretty well thought through, so, you know, I think the Walgreens idea of being able to have both of them turn out right at the same time is going to be a huge benefit, as if you're going to have Walgreens going to the left and then forcing them to the right, you're right next to each other, that presents some issues. So overall, I do think it's a good plan. It's a good development for our community, for our area. I guess the only other thought I had was any type of additional sound disturbances from any of the rooftop units or anything like that. If there's any considerations for acoustical screening or anything like that to dampen. We already have a pretty loud area of that neighborhood, so any addition to that would be, you know, might to put us over the edge, I guess. So okay. Otherwise, that's all I got. Thank you very much for your time.
I do. Cheryl Tucker, 434 South Cornell. They covered most of the traffic except for the other side where Jewel is and where the VFW is. That is right the corner where they leave. That area with the left turns and the right turns. And them trying to turn into Cornell is an issue that I know it's probably you're not for it, but something that might need to be checked a little farther in on a traffic control, because that square mile, as he said, it backs up, and if we get the trains going again, it will be a problem from the commuter lot also on them trying to go left and right from that area in the future. That's just my comment on, you know, that it's like a four-corner site, and if you've been there with rush hour he was bringing up, you can see with traffic coming out of all four spots, it's a disaster about to happen.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else from the public wishing to speak on this item? If it's very quick. And please state your name again, just so the court clear.
Don Ricardo, 27 North Cornell Villa Park. Employee parking. Where are they going to park? Okay. Are they going to park on my residential street across from my house? Are they going to park in the Jewel parking lot? Is Walgreens going to allow them to park there? Because if you staff a building, a business of that, you can anticipate 3 to 4 cars, which is going to reduce the amount of available parking for your customer base. Where are they going to park?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. Questions from the commission before we give the petitioner a chance to respond and move to discussion.
I'd like to just verify with staff the parking in the proposed layout that does meet requirements, correct? 'Cause it had occurred to me with employee parking that would be pretty
Yes,
tight.
it does meet the code. I'm not saying the code is what it should be, but it does meet the code. So,
Okay, I've got a question, partially both for staff and for the petitioner. In Ellen's staff report, which, by the way, Ellen, I know that this is the first meeting, so I just want to say the packets presented to planning and zoning tonight were extremely professional. I think that they're some of the best packets that we've seen. I just want to give you a lot of kudos for stepping in on an interim basis. Everything was very professional and well laid out and very thorough, so I just appreciate your diligence on everything. With regards to the proposal, though, you do make note that as the proposal design before us indicated a signage request or a proposal on the signage, I believe that you make note that the proposed signage does not meet code standards and that the petitioner did not provide or include a variance request for the signage. So I'm just looking for some clarity and or confirmation there too.
the building elevations that were drawn showed signage on all four sides, and that wouldn't be allowed. So I was just trying to notate that this did not, were this to be approved tonight, it does not constitute an approval of signage. And signage would come forth when there was an actual tenant. So they drew it in, and it's drawn on the right place were there to be a sign on any of those facades, but it was not reviewed to meet sign code, and it's too much signage. I think it's 1.2 square feet per linear side, and they would take both sides because you've got a corner lot, and that'd be the maximum square footage they could have. So.
Okay.
And typically, signs are approved as part of the sign permit process, and so that's where the calculations are done and the the design and the negotiations on that.
Yeah.
The exception to that might be in a plan development, or if they were requesting a variation.
Yeah. And I had it in my report. With it being a corner, there's an additional 0.75 square feet per linear foot, so this building could have 2.25 square feet per linear foot of the building street facing frontage and signage. So.
Other questions? Yes, Commissioner Case.
I think we had a problem with cut-through traffic by Thornton by Euclid before, with all the cars cutting through before they put that medium strip in. And the suggestion was brought up, speed bumps. I don't know if that's a possibility to help traffic slow down. A lot of people wouldn't go down the street again if there were speed bumps there. And my other question would be, the only one I would have in that corner area where they have the little green by St. Charles and Cornell, I would love to see ballards there for protection, for safety. Because the front entrance is right by. Love that they moved the entrance back 10 feet, but still, that's just, every time I used to walk down that sidewalk, it was so narrow.
Oh yeah, I see what you're.
But I don't know, I know on the other side they have a bunch of mechanical stuff that runs underneath those sidewalks. So I don't know if they'd be able to go down and do that. Because I know by Dairy Queen they couldn't do it because they had a bunch of pipes that ran underneath there. I just look for the safety part of it though.
Okay.
I've got another question for staff, if you have a second here with this. Notwithstanding the variations for the plantings of the parking lot, which is relatively small things, I think it's important just to address concerns from the neighborhood on Cornell, given the district, this property. If today they said, all right, no drive-through, they're good to go, basically. Like there will always this business can exist there today without a drive-through. I mean the traffic and the concerns. I mean whether it's this business or the next one, that's going to exist.
It's a permitted use in the district, so yes.
All right.
Okay.
I have a question for staff also. On page 5, the last bullet and the last sentence of that bullet, therefore staff cannot support a coffee shop use but can support a restaurant use. Specifically, why can staff not support a coffee shop use?
I think it was at peak hour, it was 30% more traffic projected were to be a coffee shop.
So it is just
That-
related to traffic?
That's why staff was recommending that it be for restaurant only, not for the coffee shop use.
Would it be possible to, the traffic study was not in our, was one thing that was not in our report.
Oh.
Would it be possible to get that page from the
Yes.
petitioner's report up on the screen?
I can't get into the network to pull it up. We have it in that one slide. We'll see if we can blow it up. I think I can do that.
Yeah, that's just the one page I was referring to that was in their report. Because that may be something we want to talk to the traffic consultant about, but if you could just open that up real quick.
It's better, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can see the difference in the morning peak, especially there, and the total in the morning as well. We could talk about it a little bit more when we get into the discussion, but obviously a coffee shop, whether it's a national chain or a local chain, there's different traffic volumes for those. But the AM peak is going to be substantially more at a coffee shop or a donut shop than a Jimmy John's or someone else who might be likely to use a building of that size. I think we can pretty much write off the McDonald's and the Burger Kings and the Wendy's. It's not a big enough site.
I will say, as the applicant said, the national chains like a Starbucks would not go in here. You know, their site specifications have changed. They want mobile order, and you know, you order ahead, you have the space where you park, and you give your number, and this site can't do it. But back to your question, it does meet our code for parking. So.
And I just wanted to clarify that that's why you did not support a coffee shop.
Correct.
It's just the traffic.
Correct.
Other questions?
I had one other question for the petitioner. I just wanted to clarify the use on the north side of the property that you've identified as being sort of a collection point for water. That's just for, can you go ahead and kind of describe to us exactly what your plan is for that?
David Kennedy, once again, 35 East Wyper Drive.
On the north side of the property, where you have 3 trees there now, can you tell us again exactly what the use is for that portion of the property on the north side?
That is strictly a landscape buffer.
Okay.
When you get north of the parking lot, it's all turf, plantings, trees, and so forth. And the idea there is to, if we have to have a drain in that area, we'll put a drain there. We haven't designed it yet, but there's no other use for that area. It's not going to be populated by anything else other than, you know, a buffer, green buffer and landscaping.
Just the green buffer. Okay.
That's right.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I mean, obviously, if something comes up during discussion, we can always ask additional questions. Okay, so it'd be a point for any closing comments by the petitioner, or if you want to address any of the questions that were, or comments that were put before you this evening, that might be helpful.
Thank you. Robin Whitehurst, 124 West Division Street, Villa Park, Illinois. I'm with Bailey Edward as well as David's my colleague. Just a few things. We were kind of taking some notes here. For the property immediately to the north and the discussion you just had, that green space is intended to be a buffer yard so that we can really buffer the residential use to the north from the parking lot area. As David mentioned, it's entirely intended to be green space with the trees and landscaping as shown. We will obviously have to work very closely with Public Works to turn in engineering plans, so we won't be draining any water further from this site to the north. This site won't do anything about a Walgreens situation if there is one, but just wanted the resident to know this site will not make it any worse, and if there is any water currently heading that direction, it won't be in the future because engineering will work with our engineer to make sure that that doesn't happen. So that's the first thing. The garbage will be enclosed, and the ordinance requires the enclosure to resemble the materials used on the building. The petitioner is fully aware of that, and we've shown it that way on the plan. So that's another way of mitigating garbage blowing around, is to have an enclosure with doors around it. I wish we made everyone do that, even retroactively. I live over on Division Street, so there's a lot of apartments with garbage that blows around. So I know very much what the resident was talking about. So the ordinance does talk about that and has us mitigate that as a situation. A thing that I want to say about the coffee shop restaurant use, some good points were made that really the size of this building and site starts to self-limit the national chains that do go into this size of property, and there are some that they're not. It's not a Starbucks, as what was being said. It's not that kind of intensity of use. But we do think it's important for everyone to realize that because it is a small site, as staff mentioned, it is a tight site, and with the new realities in retail, the petitioner really hired us to get the special use because he wasn't getting traction without a special use for a drive-through. So keep that in mind, and it's a service district, and that street, MX3, is intended for this kind of use, and I'm a 31-year resident of Villa Park, and so very, very familiar with the street and multiple businesses on the street that contribute to in and out traffic, and we all seem to negotiate our way around it. So we think that this is a really good use for this property. In this area. It's a very appropriate use given the new MX3 form-based zoning. And we're really excited because this property starts to become that transformation that I think Villa Park is looking for in this district. And developments like this can start to lead to that development. So I think I caught signage. We are not asking for signage right now. As Chairman pointed out, if signage will have to go through an approval process, permit process. When we find a tenant, if they want something larger than is allowed, they'll have to come back here anyway, and we would be happy to do that. Right now, we're not anticipating that. We think that any tenant could live within the ordinance there for this property. So, anything else that you would like us to clarify? Happy to do so.
All right, thank you. I think that's probably all for now, but something could come up during discussion.
Okay,
it usually does.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll move to discussion by commission members. Who has comments? Discussion.
I guess I'll start with some comments. I like the design, I like the concept, I like the fact that they're going to move the building back. Without knowing what's going to be there. We're not sure as far as signage or anything like that. Any business that's on St. Charles Road, it's going to bring traffic to the area. But I would say with them having the drive-through, because the first concern that I did have is on the very first slide that they showed us, is the A and the B. Without the drive-through, yes, there would be a lot of cut-through through the neighborhood. With the drive-through, it'll force everybody out on St. Charles Road, which I was actually happy to see that. It's moving the building back, so it actually makes it easier to get out of Walgreens, because that one's a difficult place to get out of because of how far forward the existing building is. I think it's I think it fits. I like it. I like the buffer that he's putting between his property and the homeowner north of them. I think that will alleviate some of your water problems coming from them. I know you have water problems coming from Walgreens. I've seen it. But I like the design. I have no issues with it.
Yeah, and I know you weren't necessarily making an issue about the signs, but even not knowing what tenant, our sign ordinance is fairly recently updated and does eliminate a lot of sign options that would typically be considered visually unpleasing, like pole signs and box signs, and obviously the content we can't regulate, but other discussion?
I think my primary concern is that right turn out of the proposed property and then the Walgreens exit as well, if they need to turn left. I mean, is there any solution to go to that Walgreens property and make that a right turn only as well? Can that even be done at this point?
Yeah, I was thinking about that myself, and I don't know beyond, and staff might be able to help with this, but I don't think there would be beyond the property owner potentially negotiating with Walgreens to come to some sort of arrangement for that. And I would just, being a national corporate chain, they're probably not going to be, even though it's a good idea, they may not be, they may rely on that left turn out for delivery trucks. I mean, I don't know what their operation is, but yeah, because that is one. I mean, that is one of my concerns. I struggle a little bit with the peak on a coffee shop and the peak on St. Charles with rush hour traffic and the peak of commuter traffic. If we get back to even half full trains, we're nowhere near there yet, but other commissioners have thoughts?
Well, I like the plan. I like what they're showing, and I like the landscaping and all that with it. My concern was all around parking. Okay, 7 spots. I don't know, even a coffee shop's got to have 2 or 3 people in there dealing with making the coffee and serving it out the drive-through and everything else, or counter traffic. So now you've beaten 3 of the 7 spots up.
Well, they do have an additional 3 on the street.
Well, that was,
which is for 10 total. And that's part of, our ordinance does allow that. There are 3 on the street itself, on Cornell.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a total of 10. One of which is a handicap space, but still.
I can't stand in the way of parking because the ordinance allows it.
No, I understand.
I'm not sure that is adequate.
And it's a tough thing to say because a lot of restaurants are
I understand.
starting to limit parking too because drive-through is prevalent. But is that trend here to stay? Is hard to say. People tend to forget things once they change back.
COVID's changed a lot of things.
Yeah. Discussion from down this end.
I think it's a nice plan. It's certainly in line with the master plan for St. Charles Road. It's a vast improvement over what's there. It's very attractive. I think it's going to be a very positive addition to that street. It's a nice new building. It is really an improvement over what's there. I have no concerns about this at all. I think we're very lucky to have something this attractive go in there and replace the old dilapidated building.
Yeah, I would agree with you, and even though, generally speaking, I have not been a proponent of additional drive-throughs on St. Charles. I shouldn't say additional. I think one of the issues with St. Charles, beyond the fact that the I-dot widening pretty much took any walkability out of it 40 years ago, is that we do have a lot of wide driveway aprons up and down St. Charles, and it's why I did not vote in favor of the car wash special use that was approved some years ago. But within our guidelines for the street, the building in terms of location, even what the curb cut on St. Charles is kind of what the comprehensive plan envisions. It sets the building as close to St. Charles as reasonably safe to do. Creates a nice street wall that holds the corner. The entrance is at the corner, kind of activating that corner, and the patio along Cornell is sort of the same thing. Do we ever get to that road diet that Ellen mentioned? I don't know. I'd like to think that in 2030 the money will be the studies and the money will be there. Maybe we never get there, but even being a drive-through use, the scale and the design of this particular site does fit those parameters to my mind.
Mm-hmm.
My only other comment would be, I would certainly be in favor of removing the request that it not be a coffee shop, because really any fast food restaurant is going to have a breakfast menu, and with the breakfast menu is going to come coffee. So it's really, you've really kind of muddied the water, in terms of a breakfast menu, and then you're almost dictating what a restaurant can or cannot serve. So I don't really see the point, really, of kind of restricting this property into a fast food restaurant only.
Yeah, and that's something we certainly should discuss. But any other general comments beyond the?
I'm appreciative of the petitioner as already an existing business owner to invest in our own community or wish to invest in our own community. I think it really goes to show his intent to provide taxable revenue to the village, which is not, I understand, a planning and zoning concern, but a thought of mine nonetheless. I concur with many of the comments that were already addressed on the design, the landscaping, the plan itself. Given the limited square footage of this property in general, I think that this plan is a very adequate use of the smaller footprint of itself. The landscaping, while a variance is requested for the landscaping, I think has been very well thought out. Staff was supportive of that. It looks like the petitioner's vendors that he has hired has had a very good relationship with staff. Goes to show the camaraderie that we always appreciate when petitioners and staff are able to work in a very amicable manner. And I'm appreciative of that.
All right. Other comments? Okay, so just a couple quick comments I would make generally. One is that whatever happens up here, if this ultimately gets approved, I hope the petitioner will hear some of the concerns that were made and some of the specific things that might be able to improve your site plan a little bit more. One thing I would point out also is that there was a question regarding screening of rooftop equipment and potential noise from that. Our ordinance actually does require the screening of rooftop equipment, and as Mr. Whitehurst probably knows, it also has to be in keeping with the materials of the building. So it's not possible to just throw air conditioners or coolers on the roof and have them open. They have to be screened, and that screening needs to meet the general aesthetic of the building. And that would be approved as a part of the final package. I think that's all of my comments. So then I guess the question that remains is regarding the standards and whether or not we want to condition the standards, or the conditions, and whether or not we want to include the condition that would limit this to only a general restaurant use and not include a coffee shop type use. Can we get just a quick consensus on that?
I think that should be struck.
Okay, so we've got.
I dropped number 8.
Okay.
Same.
And then from down this end.
Say that again.
You would be in favor. You said you were in favor of striking the
number 8.
Yes.
Yes. Correct.
Okay. I don't think we really need anybody else to go on the record, but that's seems to be the majority up here. Okay. I guess if there are no other discussions, then I would need someone to make a motion, including reading the conditions into the record. Yeah. So, I guess that close the public hearing and entertain a motion from whoever wants to make it.
I can make that. I will motion to approve PZ-22-0002 for the following requests. 1, special use for drive-through in the MX3 district per section 4.7.11 drive-through structures with variations related to location of the drive-up window with canopy structure. 2, variation to allow reduced perimeter parking lot landscaped as required in section 9.1.5.d parking lot perimeter with the following conditions. 1, the development shall be in substantial compliance with the plans prepared by Bailey Edward, dated February 9th, 2022, including site plan, lighting plan, landscape plan, and exterior building elevation plans. 2, compliance with all applicable village codes and regulations. 3, obtaining all necessary permits or certifications for development, including a building permit, right-of-way permit, sign permits, and a stormwater certification. 4, the final site plan will meet all requirements of the current Illinois Accessibility Code. 5, electric lines will be buried. 6, a revised sign plan will be submitted in conformance with the zoning code. And 7, a full engineering plan will be submitted for approval for the property located at 24 East St. Charles Road, pin 0603312032, with the finding of fact that such special use meets the standards for special use enumeration in section 11.4, and that such variation meets the standards enumerated in section 11.5 of Appendix C of the Municipal Code of the Village of Villa Park Basic Zoning Ordinance.
I'll second that.
All right, so we have a motion from Commissioner Slinsky, a second from Commissioner Orlowski. Just real quick, I do have a quick comment, and I should have made this comment a bit ago. Commissioner Calvert arrived at approximately 7:47, so he was here for the entirety of this public hearing and is eligible to vote. Any questions or comments on the motion as read? All right, roll call vote. Calvert.
Yes.
Hofstra.
Yes.
Jackson.
Yes.
Case.
Yes.
Ludke.
Yes.
Orlowski.
Yes.
Romano.
Yes.
Schlinsky.
Yes.
I too vote yes, and with that, our recommendation will pass the village board. They can accept, reject, or modify as they see fit, and I wish you guys luck moving forward. Thank you.
That went quick.
All right, Our next item of business will be petition PZ 220003, 880 North Addison, amendment to ordinance 3727, granting an amendment to the PUD for 880 North Addison Road, which was amended ordinance 2501. That is for bone roofing. We'll start with Ellen in the staff report.
Okay. Thank you. There is a PUD in place on this property, and they want to put in a third accessory structure, so I asked them to amend the PUD, and I'll start. So the first PUD was put in place in 1991, and in 2012 Bone Roofing bought the property and moved in, and they had an extensive PUD that allowed for gas and fuel pumps and outside storage at a height of 12 feet, which was a variance from the code maximum of 6 feet. And then in 2019, they built this structure, which you can see from North Avenue. It is 27 feet high, 22 foot clear inside. And it's a great improvement to the site because it keeps everything under roof and it keeps things cleaner and neater. I drove through the site the other day. It's actually neat as a pin. Everything's shrink wrapped and stacked, and trucks are shined. I think it's one of our iconic businesses. I really do. They are asking for a second structure, and the code limits one accessory structure per lot for a non-residential lot, and the size of the accessory should be no greater than 1% of the area of the lot. And these structures at 90 by 130 feet and 80 by 130 do put it at over 1% of the lot. Currently, the property is zoned M1 with the PUD. The PUD, another element I should have referenced in 2012, was to allow for the retail sale in a manufacturing district. And the village did discuss if it should have been rezoned to retail, but given that the general nature of the operations retain the manufacturing zoning. So, I've gone through the history already. Okay. You can see in 1991, the property was annexed and zoned, and the first occupant there was Warning Lights Highway Technologies. And then Bone initiated that amendment in 2012, and the amendment, that PUD at that time allowed for the retail sales, allowed for the above ground fuel storage, outside storage to the height of 12 feet, and screened from adjoining view in an attractive manner. So in 2019, they built the first shelter. Here's what it looked like under construction. And as I referenced, it expedites the unloading and everything's stacked and shrink wrapped. This is the view from North Avenue. And so I will say that it's not as screened as the code might envision. The challenge is it's a pretty scrappy site. You've got scrub to the south, you've got the rail tracks, but it is clearly visible from North Avenue. We've already gone through this. One normally allowed per lot at 1% of the area. So this is where they'd like to put the second structure. It's an area of open outside storage at the moment. Again, because it's it'd be the third accessory structure, the second canopy over the product, and they total 4.89% of the total lot size. The property is still within code for lot coverage. So the three departments reviewed, and it does meet building and fire code. It meets the zoning regulations for setback and height, and the 64% is measuring building and paved surface. So I note that when the principal was first built, the impervious area was calculated as building only. And our code says 50%. I've talked with the chairman. When the lot coverage definition was changed last year, we probably needed to change the percentage in this district, because we're now measuring lot coverage as all imperviousness, whereas previously we measured building only. It's a 10-acre lot. There's not a concern from engineering on any wetlands or drainage. I've spoken to Vasily on that. I also noted as I went through this that there's an error in our zoning map. That yellow is actually commercial, so I put this in the report so it will last to be fixed once I'm gone. So the landscaping and screening requirements, again, we did not have landscaping requirements in 2018, and I thought the village might wish to consider with this amendment to the PUD to ask for some landscaping. In the report, I wrote to screen along the southern end of that new building, which is what the code would have triggered and required. And then I noticed as well, there's no screening of the parking in front. And again, this is a site, it's neat as a pin, very well maintained, a pride of ownership, very evident. But I would encourage you to consider whether or not you'd like to see landscape just where the cars are, and then possibly around the base of the sign. I do believe they meet the findings of fact standards as well as the special use standards. And as you consider it, these are the conditions for approval in the municipal code that you should consider as you look at their request.
Thank you. All right, the presentation by the petitioner. Come up to whichever podium is best for you. It doesn't matter to us really. State your name, spell your last name, please, and your address.
1024 West Main Street, St. Charles. Martin Preisitis, last name Preisaitis. We're the general contractor. We represent the client at 880 North, Bone Roofing. So the reason they want to build this is because they have a lot of material that's just sitting out in the open, and they're a roofing company, so they have a lot of insulation. And it is very neat. They keep it neat, but they want to enclose it under a roof. And they asked us to build this canopy for them. If you drive from North Avenue, as Ellen mentioned, it is visible, but this building would just be parallel to the existing building. So it would just bring out the view closer, I guess. But we want to, in our plan, we did include that we would add some evergreens and try to block off the view of the canopy building. That's really it. The land is non-permeable where we're going to build it. It's asphalt parking lot, and all the storage material is on it. We would erect foundation and columns, so there wouldn't be any difference in drainage or runoffs. I believe that's pretty much it. Just
Okay.
building a canopy. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We may have some questions.
Sure.
Yeah. All right. Anyone from the public wishing to speak on this agenda item? All right. Seeing no one, we will move to questions from the commission.
I have a question. So you're looking at building an identical structure to what exists in the back there now today, with open sides, just really a roof over the material.
Correct. It would be 10 feet shorter in width, but the length is still 100.
It's still 27.
Could you come up to the podium, please? Just because the court reporter is not present, and has to
It's,
report.
it
off
would
the
be
meeting.
identical in the height and the length, and the only difference is in the width by 10 feet.
Okay, so it's going to be 27 foot tall, just like the other.
Yes.
Same profile.
It's got 4 feet skirts on the outside, so we're going to have lighting. It will cover the light so you wouldn't shine off the building, so you wouldn't see them directly.
So I do have a question for you, sort of. If we were to request additional landscaping at the east end of the property along Addison, is that something you're in a position to speak on behalf of the applicant regarding?
No.
No.
I would have to
Okay.
have their permission.
Okay. Other questions?
Just to staff, Ellen, when you talk to the petitioner, Did you bring up landscaping in the front by for the cars and that along Addison Road?
I did not talk to the petitioner. I left a message. On his phone, he did not return the call. I've been dealing and working with Martin and the owner of Chapel Design Build.
Okay, other questions? Do you have any closing comments, or I mean, I think you probably said everything you need to say, right?
I believe this would benefit the community, because if we enclose the material, it's less likely to blow away. It's it just looks neater. I think they're investing money to make it look nicer. It's not that necessary, but they want it to look nice, and
yeah,
it's part
and
of it.
they've been a good business since they've come here, and I really do appreciate that. So, okay, so with that, we will close the public hearing and move to discussion by commission members. Anybody have a problem with the requested additional accessory building, generally speaking?
No, I'm fine.
No, I did think so.
What we might want to discuss is potentially adding on additional language to condition 2, which is found on page 7 of the request.
Yes, so the question would be whether the screening is adequate along the south side of the proposed plan, and additionally, because I think staff felt that it wasn't, is that correct? Or have you worked with them to approve the, along the south side of this, I'll get there, the accessory building?
What was proposed was a series of, I think, 8 trees and some shrubs. And the more I thought about it, actually, I think it'd be lost, and we would be, at a minimum, be better served to put that out on Addison along the parking lot. So I think that might be the compromise. It calls for 50% of the plantings to be evergreen. I've got the code up there as part of the motion. But they were prepared to screen the south. That was in the submitted site plan, and I thank them for that.
Okay. And this is a planned development, so we do have the ability to both ask for more and to give them, to find a compromise, so to speak. Yeah, because I personally am not sure how landscaping along that southern property line is going to do. I mean, it's on the edge of what's essentially a wetland, I think.
Wetland train tracks.
With the train tracks, and as much as I appreciate wanting to screen it from North Avenue, I think I've driven by it probably thousands of times, and I don't ever notice it from North Avenue, but I always notice how attractive the site is generally when coming down North Avenue for an industrial site. So perhaps there is a compromise condition that we could draft that would speak to that without requiring them to come back before us for further approval, because it seems silly to put this off another month over that.
Is there a way we could make it conditional just to make it meet current standards? Can that be the kind of generic language we use, just to meet current screening standards for?
That might be too specific.
Yeah, because the code also requires parking islands within trees within the parking lot, and I think that might be onerous at this point. So I would suggest, if I may, that you make a motion to, well, you can make this motion as you wish, but you would modify the motion that the landscaping proposed be moved to screen the parking spaces along Addison. And then I don't know if the Bone Company is represented here this evening. I've not met them. But I think that sign is just an awful lost opportunity for them. They should be landscaping the base of the sign. It just would spark a color and four-season interest, and it would really pop their site and make them more visible. So that's just my personal professional opinion. So.
Yeah.
So we'd be making a condition to
We'd be subbing out to.
subbing out the
We'd be subbing out to, and that we would say.
right, and we'd be
that-
moving the south landscaping to the east.
We wouldn't even have to mention south, but I think the proposed language would be that additional landscaping to be installed to screen the eastern parking lot
Yeah.
facade along Addison, and additional landscaping around business sign itself.
I'd be good with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be good with that.
I can actually, I've been over there. I was here whenever we first approved them. They've done nothing but improve that site. As you've said, it's immaculate over there. It's a good business for Villa Park.
Yeah, I went over there today as well. I was really surprised how neat
Yeah.
the thing was for the size of the facility.
Commissioner Case?
Yeah, it seems like landscaping's coming up a lot in our discussion. That property is perfect, if you ask me, compared to a lot of our other businesses we got around town. I mean, we have cars for landscaping. We shouldn't be worried about bone. Beyond belief.
I certainly.
If you're worried about putting flowers in there, I'll go plant them for the guy.
Yeah, no, I agree. I certainly understand where you're coming from. Where we're at as a village is that until about 15 years ago, there was no landscape ordinance at all in the village, which is how we wound up with Jewel Osco's parking lot, and but it's also how but these little incremental changes are also how we've improved some places like North Park Mall, which was built with essentially no landscaping.
I agree, but
or the sign, I can't think of the name of it, the Villa Oaks, I think it is, on Roosevelt, which was built with no landscaping, and it may be minor, but I think in the grand scheme of the project, it will be worth it for everyone.
I think you'd be happy with the trade-off of not having to do anything on the south end.
Yeah, they would otherwise be required to put screening along the railroad tracks, essentially.
Well, to talk about some other screenings we have in Villa Park there.
Yeah. All right. So, unless there's other specific discussion, I would entertain a motion for assume approval of this project. But whoever wants to make it.
Okay, make a motion to approve application PZ-22-0003 for the following. 1. Amendment to a previously approved planning unit development under Ordinance 3727, incorporating an additional accessory structure into an existing property for the property located at 880 North Addison Road, pins 03, 33, 307, 013, and 03, 33, 308, 015, with the following conditions. 1. That the site be developed in accordance with the site plan prepared by Chapel Design Group dated November 29th, 2021. 2. That additional landscaping be installed to screen the eastern parking lot facade along Addison and additional landscaping around the business sign itself. 3. Compliance with all applicable village codes and regulations. 4. Obtaining all necessary permits, certifications for development, including a building permit, right-of-way permit, sign permits, and a stormwater certification, with the finding of fact that such amendment meets the criteria enumerated in section 11.3.10 of Appendix C of the Municipal Code of Village of Villa Park zoning ordinance, and with the finding of fact that such special use meets the standards for special use enumerated in section 11.4, and that such variation meets the standards enumerated in section 11.5 of Appendix C of the Municipal Code of Village of Villa Park Basic Zoning Ordinance.
I'll second that.
We have a motion from Commissioner Schlinsky and a second from Commissioner Orlowski. Any questions or comments on the motion? Roll call vote. Calvert.
Yes.
Hofstra.
Yes.
Jackson.
Yes.
Case.
Yes.
Ludke.
Yes.
Orlowski.
Yes.
Romano.
Yes.
Schlinsky.
Yes.
I too vote yes, so our recommendation will pass the village board. They can accept, reject, or modify as they see fit. I appreciate your time this evening, and good luck with the project.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Yep. All right. So the next item of business here is a concept plan review. So to clarify, there will be no decision made on this project this evening. It's just for discussion purposes. This is for petition PZ 220001 for 100 to 110 South Villa Avenue. It's a proposal for a mixed-use development. The Union from Catalyst Partners and Marquette Companies, the petitioner. So the way we're going to work this evening is we will allow the petitioner to put on their presentation, and then anyone who has questions or comments regarding the project will have a chance to come up to the podium and make their statements. Because this is an informal hearing, what I would request is that you make comments and questions to me, and then when we move into our discussion, if the petitioner wants to address those directly, they can. If they choose not to, at this point, I think that's fair to them. All right, whenever the petitioner or whoever wants to start this thing.
I didn't want to supersede Ellen if she's going to speak. So, good evening. Appreciate your time tonight and the input that you'll give us this evening. My name is David Lyon. I'm with Catalyst Partners, and we are located at 833 Michigan Street in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I am joined tonight by other members of our team, which includes our partner, Marquette Partners. I'll let Ann Reckelhoff introduce herself and give her her address when she does speak. We also are joined by Jason Korb, our architect of Korb Associates Architects, and also Kevin Wagner of V3 Engineering. So I'd like to start out by just giving an overview of sort of the qualitative aspects of the project, and then allow the team to provide some more detail on the quantitative aspects of it. So the starting point here is this image. The aesthetic and theme that we have created is really grounded in the rich history of the industry and railways here in Villa Park. And our project anchors the eastern terminus of the Great Western Trail, and is directly west of the Ovaltine Chocolate Factory, or what was the Ovaltine Chocolate Factory, and now Ovaltine Court Apartments. There we go. So the idea here in this aesthetic and theming is that trains and train stations bring people together, as do public spaces in garden villages. What we're striving to augment, what we're striving to do is to augment what exists here in the village, especially at this location, and at the same time create a new place to bring people together. And that theme that I just described is pulled through in our overall aesthetic, and the theming you see here is indicated in the signage that we're showing you. So this is the branding or image that we're trying to convey, and the name we've chosen for this is the Union Apartments at Old Town Villa Park. This next image that I'm going to show you is a little hard to see, but I wanted to share with you the information page that we did share with those that participated in the recent community open house. Let me try to, yeah, I'll just push the plus sign, right? And the reason I want to show you this, it gives you an overview of some of the amenities that we are going to be providing. So as a start, we'll be providing 215 units of luxury market rate apartments. And that will sit on top of structured parking. So that structured parking will be comprised of 100 new public parking spaces that will be covered. And in addition to that, we will be providing reserve parking for our residents. Additionally, we'll be providing 8,000 square feet of Class A commercial space on Villa Avenue. Within the project, serving the community, we'll be providing green features as part of the development. Jason Korb, our architect, might hit on some of these in his presentation, but you see here the list of some of these elements: energy efficient appliances, special lighting, and probably one of the key features will be electric car charging stations within the residential parking and potentially in the public parking as well. The union will also offer residents high-end and desirable lifestyle and community amenities. Some of those things include individually controlled heating and air conditioning, internet, special features within the units such as washer and dryer, quartz granite countertops. We'll have a fitness center within the development. And then you'll see later in the images, we'll also have an amenity deck which will feature some of these elements that you see at the bottom here: green spaces, pool, fireside lounge, grilling station, and a dedicated dog walk area. So before turning it over to Jason, I just wanted to underscore a few things that this project will be providing. I did mention the 100 spaces of public parking that will serve the business community, but in addition, we'll be providing 325 dedicated residential parking spots. So under our current design, there'll be a total of 425 structured parking spaces. Additionally, currently there are 2 overhead power lines that run east and west, one on the northern border of the site and one on the southern border. And our intent is to bury both of those power lines. They're quite unsightly, and they'll encroach on the development. Lastly, we'll be creating some additional green space at grade. Currently, the entire site is concrete, impermeable surface, and there is an encroachment that exists. It has existed for a long time on the southern border onto the Great Western Trail. So as part of our site engineering, we'll be returning that currently concrete area to green space that will become part of the Great Western Trail and remove that encroachment that exists today. So I'm going to have Jason Korb come up and introduce himself and talk about the site and the project.
Good evening. My name is Jason Korb, K-O-R-B. Address is 648 North Plankinton, P-L-A-N-K-I-N-T-O-N, Suite 240, Milwaukee. So just following up on David's introduction. So this is the aerial of the site when the mulch business was still on it. And here it is in 3 dimensions, so fairly blighted looking and not very contributory to the environment on Villa Avenue. Here it is looking from Villa Avenue. And here are the existing structures today. So these would be removed, and then the lower image is obviously the trailhead for the Great Western Trail. So here's a good overview image where we see Ovaltine Court in the foreground and the proposed development along Villa in the background. So what's being proposed is a 7-story building. The ground floor consists of the parking David referenced, along with retail lining Villa, the residential lobby. There's actually 2. One is on the northeast corner of the corner of Villa and Wildwood. There's a secondary lobby on the northwest corner. The balance of the villa frontage is Class A retail. And we have 5 floors of apartments above. And one of the reasons that this image is telling is that a large number of the amenities for this apartment building are actually outdoor on the roof of the parking. So if you look carefully on the western courtyard, you can see that there is a southern-oriented swimming pool and other amenities on those decks. That is to give it the maximum amount of sunlight. We imagine the eastern courtyard is a little quieter space. And there's this tiny northern courtyard, which right now basically consists of a dog run. So that is another amenity that's being provided. And then one feature in the southeast corner of the building, the retail is allowed to sneak out of the building footprint, if you will, and we create a special sort of double height space and an outdoor plaza. And so the idea behind this is to really continue to activate the trailhead of the Great Western Trail. So people at the end of a ride could stop by and get a bite, get a beer, who knows what will be in there, but we have this special pavilion at the trailhead. You can see the street facades are largely masonry with a little bit of siding infill at the windows. We have very large windows. We have inboard balconies on the street frontages, so they're not really hanging into the right-of-way. And then we do have some awnings and signage opportunities for the retail and a signage band above the first floor windows. And so this is an overview from the street. This is looking south and west from across the street on Villa. So again, we can see that we have largely masonry building facades. We did put a large break in the building, which you can sort of see that in the center of the image, and that was just really to break it up because it is 450 feet long. You can see it's kind of concealed by this car in the street in the foreground, but the entrance to the public parking is proximate to Villa Avenue. So the north and eastern 60% of the parking floor plate on the ground floor is open air public parking. And again, the exit for that is proximate to Villa Avenue. The second floor is also completely parking, but architecturally has been designed to match the rest of the building. So the intent is it does not read like a parking structure. It will also be open air, but those window openings would actually have a perforated metal in them likely to allow air to pass through. And then again, our 5 floors of residential above. I think that's the last line, right?
Yeah, I just want to add to what Jason said about the perforated metal. We'd like to create some special inserts for that will reflect the history of the village. So that'll be sort of a special exercise that our design team will work with the village, historic society, what have you, to try to reflect important elements in the village with respect to history and have them permanent pieces to the building. And so let's see, yeah, so that is the last slide. And so really at this point, I think public comment and then feedback from the commission.
All right. Anyone who wishes to speak on this agenda item, now would be the time to do that. Come up one by one, state your name, please spell your last name and your address, and then generally try to keep about 3 minutes. We're not going to be super strict on that because this is not a public hearing, but also there's not a ton of people here tonight, but try not to be super repetitive either. If you agree with what the person before you said, it's okay to make that point. Whoever wants to go first.
Good evening. My name is Corrine Alfano. It's C-A-R-I-N-E. Alfano, A-L-F-A-N-O, and I'm at 24 South Monterey Avenue in Villa Park. And thank you for letting us speak after the presentation. I did attend the community open house that the developers held, and it was really informative, and I have mixed feelings about this development. My biggest concern is the 7 stories. We live in a very charming area of Villa Park, and it's 7 stories is a lot bigger than Ovaltine. And when I was speaking with the developers, there was a huge comparison with Ovaltine has this. Look at Ovaltine. And I do look at Ovaltine, and it's charming, and it's over a bigger land, bigger acreage. And not one of those buildings is 7 stories. It's pretty large. One of the other things that I think is charming about the other developments that we have there, and I do know that we need to have some updating, is that we do have the easements, and you were talking earlier about perimeter landscaping. And so when we walk on Villa and you go on the Ovaltine side, you're not just walking right next to a building. You are walking right next to more of like more green areas, more plants, more vegetation, and that does add to that charm in our community. The developer says that there are green features and there are green spaces. To me, as a neighbor, I see that that's a nice draw for anybody who may want to rent. But as a neighbor, I really would like to see more green spaces on the Villa side of the concept renderings, and hopefully if it comes to fruition, because again, it's the charm of our town. I'm a little concerned about some of the traffic and the exit being to Villa. I'm not sure if that means that that's just for those public spaces, or if that also means that's for all of those spaces. We do have, in the springtime, the nice days that we have, we do get a lot of traffic there, and there are a lot of pedestrians, there's a lot of bikers, there's just a lot of life, and I like that, but I'm afraid that when we add a lot more cars, it becomes a bigger traffic concern and a safety concern. I'd just like to see it match those other bigger buildings that we have. We have the multi-level office across from Mike's, the strip mall and Mike's. They also have that easement with the greenery, and I just like to really see that instead of making it look more like a, you know, like a Lincoln Avenue in Chicago where everything kind of feels like it's coming in on you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else wishing to speak on this agenda item?
Cheryl Tucker, 434 South Cornell, and which wasn't shown in this drawing. I did show up to their, they have a design where their parking garage empties out onto Wildwood on the backside where the Great Western comes down and leads into the park at Lions. I'm a little concerned from their drawing of that exit that they have, that exit out of the parking lot right there, on visibility being a biker and a walker there, on how dangerous that's going to be with cars going into it and coming out from the parking garage. That's a design they haven't shown you yet, but it was on their drawing that I saw that they had 2 exits right there where it joins off coming off of the path coming down heading that way onto Wildwood. So,
okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on this? Yeah, please.
Yeah, I'm Louis Lemieux, Lemieux, 40-year resident. I live at 333 East Highland, which is about a block and a half south. Let's see, and I also did live on Villa for a few years. So I'm aware of the traffic on Villa. I just wanted to say that I am in favor of the development, and I'm thrilled that we have a responsible, experienced developer here. And they have a history of good construction around the area with very responsible management. My son lives in one of their developments over in Lisle. I would like to see this. Unfortunately, I've seen a lot of developers leave Villa Park because they are sometimes, they encounter difficulties here. You know, and I want to see them come here and not go to Lombard, Elmhurst, Lyle, Oak Park, and those communities seem to be more friendly to this type of development. I am aware of flooding issues around here, but I think, you know, they've hired V3, and V3, I've read their reports for the past, you know, 30 years or so. I'm very aware of them, and I think they hired the right people. Let's see, they have been doing a lot around this area. The village, you know, they have what we call Foley's Field. That's the Foley's residence that's been demolished. And then they've got the storm trap that they just installed right across from the Prairie Path. Traffic problems, what I've observed is on Villa is it's non-residents. That's our difficulty. It's a speed. It's somebody avoiding the Route 83 traffic. That's what it is. And we live right 2 blocks away from Villa and Highland, and we hear the non-residents speeding away from that you know, that stop sign all the time. Anyhow, I'm really thrilled again. You know, I think this is gonna have improved retail for the residents. That's what we've been looking for a long time, and it's finally coming. And we're also looking for the tax help that can hopefully, you know, that can help us with our improvements and our sewer improvements that we need. So, yeah, it's pretty much what I wanted to say. I hope, you know, I hope you're going to look at this favorably. And I think we have a responsible developer here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Okay. If anybody changes their mind, you know, it's kind of informal, might have a chance. Okay, so I guess I would first give you a chance to respond to anything from that you would like to.
Absolutely. I think the team could respond to some of those concerns with additional information that I didn't provide, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine, and we will probably have additional questions and comments,
great.
but please proceed with.
I'd like to invite up Ryan Wagner of V3 as a start to share some information on actually what's happening on the site as we actually add green space and address that, but also Ms. Tucker's concern about the northern border, which is actually eliminating some aprons and some dangerous situations and continuing a sidewalk and adding some landscape there as well, which might help with the bicycle traffic. So I'm gonna, I put in here the before and after site plans of yours, so let me make this a little smaller, Ryan, and yeah.
Good evening, Ryan Wagner with V3 Companies, 7235 Janes Avenue, Woodridge, Illinois. So what's on screen here is really just a highlight of how little green space exists on the site today. As David discussed, the old AK mulch site is the site's completely impervious. It's concrete parking to the east, a couple of buildings remain, and dense compacted gravel and pavement on the rest of the site. The improvement that he spoke to on the south side is this, it's about a 12 to 15 foot width of what was the prior development's encroachment onto the Western Trail property. So that's the strip that will be, I guess if you want to say, returned back to the Great Western Trail and landscaped. Additionally, with the improvements, we're offered the opportunity to kind of revamp the parkway along the west and north sides of the development and include additional parkway landscaping that doesn't exist there today. So the sidewalk would hug the building with the ability to have green space between, well, a green space parkway. We don't have a landscape plan to show you today, but that would offer a lot of opportunity to create a real parkway there.
And then could you also maybe hit on the traffic study?
And I guess the, as far as the concern on the driveway, the driveway itself is not off of Villa. It is off of Wildwood here near Villa. So this driveway is for the public parking lot. And then the driveway in the rear would be the driveway that connects to the residence parking area. I think certainly there will be standard traffic control measures with respect to garage entries. There's often, like you see in the city, mirrors on the edges and or audio warning systems. I'm sure those are all items that the development team will look at as we further the design of the site.
So quick clarification. So the northeast, let's call it the northeast parking entrance, that would be for the public parking
Correct.
only, and the one on the west end would be for residential parking only. Is that accurate?
Yep.
I mean, I understand these plans may evolve, but as this stands right now.
Yeah, and that's a security measure as well, in that there'll be a separate entrance, but certainly, but also there won't be access to the residential parking and elevator by the public. So
Okay.
it provides that security.
Is there, so if somebody parks there and wants to go to one of the other businesses on Villa Avenue, they have to go out Wildwood and come around, or is there entrances on that first floor out of the parking for pedestrians to walk?
Are you referring to just the businesses in general on Villa?
Yeah.
No, right now the plan is that they would come out onto Wildwood and possibly onto the trail. That would cost us a parking spot, but our building lobby and retail sit between the parking and Villa Avenue. So the other thing is, depending on the tenant, that retail could have a back door directly into the parking, depending on who's the nature of the tenant that goes into there.
Okay.
So there's just simply no southern pedestrian entrance or exit?
Not as we sit here today. However, we could move the striping of one of our public accessible stalls to the south, and in that striped area, we could put an egress door that exits onto that plaza. So that southern strip of green that Ryan referred to is what's being sort of given back. The white area above it in the southwest corner is still part of the property. That will be hardscaped, so that's meant to be outdoor seating, hopefully for a restaurant or food hall or some use like that, that occupies that two-story pavilion. So we could create better connectivity out of there by giving us an option to go south as well as north, but we can't get through the retail unless a retailer wants a back.
Yeah, I would suggest exploring that better connectivity, because you're essentially, you're adding a 4-block walk to anybody that parks in the south end of that garage that goes down to Pioneer or more and then walks back.
Well, and it may require us to, so right now you can kind of see it. There is and I'll move my cursor over it. This darker line right here that blocks this off, this is additional residential parking right now. And then this in the northeast corner is the 100 public parking spaces. Now, the location of that, what would probably be a fence inside the building, that can move such that the public parking could just occupy the east entirely from north to south. And that would allow us to connect it to the trail, or rather to our plaza.
Yeah, I would look at that in some detail as you move forward. I know this is fairly preliminary still, we're in discussion.
I would agree with that. I think you need an attractive entrance and exit into that parking garage for the visitors that's well lighted, and that someone would feel safe, you know, entering that garage at night. Walking around down to Wildwood and having to walk in that door, I could see where some people would have some concerns with that. But also, you know, Ovaltine, there was a lot of missed opportunities with that structure and how it was built. And one of them, I think, is the fact that it wasn't or isn't well integrated into the neighborhood and the community. It's almost like it has its back to the community. And I like the fact that this is integrated right up to the street. It's part of the community. And I think, you know, having that attractive entrance into the parking garage is important.
To that point, I know that there was some comments regarding whether or not there should be landscaping on Villa. I know that type of discussion, it's largely aesthetic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Personally, to your point, I think personally one of the failings of Ovaltine is that those commercial spaces are set back 4, 5, 6 feet from the street, and because of that, they attract real estate offices and destination uses as opposed to retail uses and restaurant uses, because you're not walking by those streetscape windows. I mean, that's what invites you when you walk past the rolled up doors on Moore, whether or not you like Moore. That connectivity to Moore is what makes Moore function. It's the same thing if you cross the corner to Fuel. Their connectivity to the sidewalk is what activates that street. And the farther you get back from the street and the more you put between the building and the street, the less of that connection there is. Now, there are ways to, personally, for me personally, I would not want to see that building set back on Villa. I do like that, you know, the parkway, that there's potential for parkway treatment around the north and the west, and opening up the green space on the prairie path there. I mean, the Great Western Trail seems like there could be some potential for things along there.
You know, we embrace the same philosophy, so what you just described and what you see was a proactive choice from a design perspective. The traditional approach to where we set the building on Villa Avenue,
yeah,
and to be consistent with that, with the other buildings that have been there a long time.
Yeah, and I would assume that even though we're not seeing it here, you know, you're going to have street trees or whatever equivalent landscaping that can be fit in that streetscape, street furniture, those types of improvements. I would hope between you and the village, however that plays out, because that's some great opportunity along there, especially with you activating the southeast corner.
Yeah, and I want to just show that was just, it's such a critical corner to what we're trying to achieve, that I need to just show that again and see if it generates further discussion on that point that you just made.
That
we really want to, again, take advantage of that eastern terminus. I've spent a lot of time over the last few years staring at that corner, believe it or not, and it's pretty amazing what happens there, let alone, I mean, during the week, on good weather, days and nights, let alone on a weekend when people are using the trail and stopping there. So we would really want to create something special there, not just within the retail but out on the patio that really integrates that trail with whatever service we provide from a commercial perspective.
And while I will certainly have a lot of questions and comments as this moves through, and some of them might make you roll your eyes, I'm going to just tell you that this image is what drew me to this project. And I don't. It's very engaging. The trail there is something that's not happened on that side in anybody's lifetime here. And arguably it doesn't happen at the Prairie Path either. And those are the kind of opportunities we should be capitalizing on. Do any of you happen to know what the height is of the 4-story building in Ovaltine along the old warehouse the old industrial building?
We've been trying to estimate it. It is 4 stories, but because it was a factory,
right,
the floor-to-floors are much higher. So we estimate the floor-to-floors on that building could be almost 14 feet in the historic building. So that's 28, 56 feet tall, plus the tower in that building is actually, David learned, is used as bike storage. So the tower on that building actually goes even higher.
We had a discussion with the fire chief, or the deputy fire chief, and they indicated that that's where I got that intel from. So it's that crown, right? That's the overall height, but we're also, you know, comparing ourselves, at least the fire chief did, to I think it's called the Garden Station project over by the metro station, and this is, I think, theoretically the exact same height as what's proposed.
7 stories.
So at this point, and again, I know we're preliminary, but what is your like max zoning height on this project?
The site, the height of the building is actually, because this is a proposed PUD, is dictated by the building code.
Well, I mean, what of your proposal, not the zoning code itself? What are you proposing?
It's 84 feet and 84'8", I think. We have a hard cap at 85 feet because it goes to a different and more expensive class of construction after 85 feet. So we have to stay under that.
Okay. I'll shut up and let somebody else talk.
And I would just, oh, sorry, go ahead, sir.
Well, I love the project, but I got to ask, I know we have surrounding towns, but what does it do to Villa Park with Hook and Ladder? Do they have to invest in something like that, or are we going to count on the surrounding towns? Or something to get up that height?
Yeah, I didn't get the detailed feedback from the fire chief and deputy fire chief that we had a preliminary meeting with, but it didn't indicate that anything new would be necessary. They've yet to do a full review, obviously, but I got positive feedback which told me this is in the realm of possibility given current village capabilities for life, fire, and safety. I'm sorry to talk around it, but I didn't get
No. Sprinkler system.
I got just basic feedback, and it didn't seem, at least initially, the height didn't seem a concern.
Okay.
Yeah, that was certainly raised with Garden Station.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I think the general response is this is not the type of building where they fight fires from the outside very often.
Right, I know.
I don't want to speak on behalf of the chief, but
no, I had to just ask.
Yeah.
No, you're exactly right. That was his comment.
Yeah,
I mean,
between
you can look downtown, they got the Willis Tower, they don't fight that one from the outside.
Yeah, no. Between being sprinkled and you know, the exterior water sources and all that.
Other than that, I'm all for the project. So
I think it's worth noting. Conceptually, I think it's a great project. Historically, that area, business owners and residents are already very, 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 and I can't stress it, very concerned with traffic and parking. If you move forward, be very aware that that's going to be a concern that you are going to meet head on.
No, I appreciate that. So to that end, we are preparing for future public hearings. Obviously, we've talked about the public parking, the 100 dedicated spots that the village will control and be made available to the public. But we've also completed a traffic study of our own that did contemplate not only pre-COVID, current conditions as we heard in the initial presentation this evening, but also took into account that the possibility of a recreation center being built on Lions Park. So again, we took into account all that, or I should say our engineers did in performing that traffic study. So that's part of our submission, our formal submission to the village, and will be discussed in more detail at the next public hearing.
And commissioners, remind me, last meeting, wasn't there something about Villa becoming a bigger artery cut through? Didn't that come up?
It's proposed to become, at least temporarily, the truck route for the new AK mulch site, Villa to Wildwood East.
Yeah, cut out. But I thought even between Roosevelt and beyond north, I thought that was.
It's just from St. Charles to Wildwood, and then Wildwood down to AK mulch, to keep trucks off Monterey. Monterey cannot handle the traffic that it's getting. And Wildwood probably can't long term, but it's a more modern road. So. To the point you raised about parking, you probably caught it, but this does include 100 public parking spaces.
Right.
Which, how many parking spaces are currently at AK Mulch? Does anybody know the answer to that?
88, 87, 88.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, even that being said, we know that there's going to be an issue. I mean, it's going to come up.
Okay. Ovaltine was supposed to be an issue too, but really isn't that bad.
No, and I think there were missed opportunities with Ovaltine, as I think everybody knows. But without Ovaltine, we're not here having this meeting for this project. Okay. Anybody else have specific questions, comments, anything regarding the design at this point? Favorable, not favorable? And I don't mean like whether or not you're favorable on the project, but anything that might lend some guidance to things that we're looking for. One thing I would say is I do like that you've turned the courtyards on the top of the second floor south facing. I know some of the early renderings weren't really like that. You had a more consistent wall, and I think it steps it back from the prairie path, from the Great Western Trail. I do like that. So you don't have a 400-foot, 7-story wall on the trail. I like the way that you've chosen at this point to break it up on Wildwood as well. Other comments, questions, thoughts? They'll be back before us at some point, but
I've got a couple of comments. One, we also have a traffic and safety commission. I'm not sure your level of involvement with them, or if this would be applicable to Senate Traffic and Safety, along with the residents' concerns and those of the commissioners that you've heard today. Second, I concur that I do like the more open, exposed areas that on the southern end that will face the Great Western, the Prairie Path. I think that's an advantage. The additional green space that you will essentially remit essentially back to us is great. I guess I was unaware that there was some encroachment previously, and or that it's been unaddressed for years. I think that I might be in the minority here, that I struggle with the lack of green space on the eastern end. I do understand aesthetically the concept that you're going for, and Chairman's comments are taken under advisement, so I think that I just need to kind of wrap my head around what I'm personally looking for. But again, conceptually, I do understand the aesthetic. This photograph right here, this construct, is a very well designed image for us to rely upon. One thing that I do also want to to make as a note of consideration is that this is obviously a high value project in development in the area that will also be essentially a neighbor across the street from our Lions Park development, whatever that amounts to, which I'm hopeful will be a very successful project, and that hopefully that the board will approve shortly. We have had neighbors in the past that we didn't get along with from a village, and residents from the village did not get along with those neighbors, and we've indicated that on record previously through other petitions that have come before. So while it seems as though you've gotten extremely high praise from the gentleman that was in the audience today, just be courteous and consensuous to being a good neighbor as we develop another large parcel essentially to the north by northwest of this parcel.
Yeah, and I know this rendering was probably fairly early in the process, but that is, I don't know what opportunities there are for landscaping in the public way, and working with the village on that, whether it's in the form of street trees or planters. I'm sure.
My architect's not whispering to me, definitely yes. It's been done before. We're certainly open to that. So yeah, there's room there. We're going to get real creative. We want to make this a success, and if the village, we can work with the village to create something that would only enhance our project, right?
No, and just to add on to that, the ground floor is not really even about aesthetics. It's what retailers demand.
Right.
And they demand glass that goes as close to the ground as you can get it, and as tall as you can get it, and as out front as you can get it. I'm 100% in favor of street trees there, because it does not hurt what the retailers are trying to do, but it could soften up Villa quite a bit. So we would work with the village to make that happen.
Yeah, and like I said, street trees might not be the answer, but you're an architect, you've got landscape architects, we've got engineers. It can get worked out. Other thoughts, questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman, can I point out one thing?
Yeah.
Can you go to the plat?
Sure. That last the image that Ryan was working from.
Bump out into
Oh,
the trail,
yeah.
if you would, just so they're aware of that.
This one right here.
If you notice I just want to point out, see the green, that this property owns to the center of the trail. So I just don't want you to be surprised down the future. We looked at that, there was like an extra parcel. So the encroachment went beyond that. But what you're seeing here is, this is the trail here. This parcel truly does own this extra strip here. And I'm there, the green. I just want to point that out. So
Who owns that?
Oh, so
the trail is not a clean line along the northern,
Okay.
it dips down. So they have a little bit more to work with there because they own this. And then this is the area here that they're going to green up, that right now, when you look at the pavement out there right now, it goes to here, to this bottom of the green. And they're going to green that up. But I just wanted to point out that it's a jagged lot line here.
yeah, that's interesting. I've seen that. Generally don't see that along the Prairie Path, but there are places even farther east outside of our village where I've seen that same thing with the Great Western.
So it's not actually a legal encroachment. You guys actually, the current owner of that
part of
land
it is
actually
because
owns it?
a day after the Board of Trustees voted on the site control, we had a meeting with DuPage County, who actually controls it, informing us.
Okay.
And it was also participated by the engineering department of Villa Park. And so I know there is a portion that we do have to, that's encroaching upon DuPage County. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll start over. So, for the record, so in response to your question, I do believe there is a portion of the AK mulch site as it sits today with the impervious surface that encroaches upon the Great Western Trail, because we were contacted by the village in DuPage County to have a discussion about our plans and to include in those plans the removal of that encroachment and the return of that to the Great Western Trail, which is controlled by DuPage County.
Thank you for the
So
clarification.
I'm sorry, but I don't know the exact amount of that, but we can get that information and have it ready to present in more detail, showing on the survey where the encroachment is at the next hearing.
Thank you.
All right, anything else for the petition at this point? Okay, anything you guys want to add at this point?
No, thank you very much.
Okay.
I really appreciate your input.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, anybody need a break before we push into this last item? All right, we'll power through then. So the last item here, 4B, is informal discussion of potential amendments to the village zoning ordinance. Most of these are items that we previously discussed. A few of these are new. And this will be fairly informal and more trying to decide what we're going to move forward with and maybe what not move forward with. Less about the details, given the time.
Well, I think the drive width section 1 is just something really easy that we can knock out right now. It doesn't look like there's any additional proposed changes to that, so if we could potentially put this on the agenda for our April meeting, at least for the revisions to sections 7.8.4.b and 7.8.5. I think that we were at unanimous or close to unanimous approval on these before they were essentially remitted back to Planning and Zoning by the Board of Trustees. It seems like a very simple one to knock out.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I know Ellen mentioned that there might be some discrepancies in the ordinance regarding minimum driveway width. That could be a holdover from the translation from code, from the old code to the new code. So there might be some other small changes that need to be made along with that. But generally speaking, I think we all were fine with the intent of those changes, and I don't see any issues with moving that forward as quickly as we can.
I met with Vasily today. He said at one point the code references 8-foot minimum width, and at another point a 9. He's comfortable with it being the 8 as the minimum because some of our homes have such narrow lot line front yards, linear length of the front yard, and 8 is sufficient for a car. It's tight, but it is sufficient. So I'm going to look for that discrepancy and put the 8-foot in there. And then he also feels that some of the language regarding driveway width and apron width are confusing, so we'll probably bring back a clarification on that too.
Okay. Yeah, if all that could come back together, that would be great. The private service walk with an encroachment, that was pretty straightforward at the time. But Ella did raise some questions in that currently. Do you want to explain what your thinking is on that?
What's here is pretty clear cut, I think, that we had not regulated the maximum width of the sidewalk, so we're adding that 5-foot maximum unless it's going to an existing sidewalk, which is wider, in which case it could be that width. And then having to add it to the permitted obstructions table in 1419. I raised the question if you wanted to make an additional change when you've got a service walk along the house, parallel to the house, to the lot lines, interior side lot lines. Do you want to say that it has to be 2 foot in? Now, there's an awful lot of 50-foot wide lots in town, and those that have the garage in the rear, you've got tend to have 5-foot side yard on one side and 10-foot side yard on the other. Now, you might not want to bother to put a service walk where the driveway is, because you've already got that paved. But on the other side of the house, if you were to put a sidewalk, lot line house up in the middle, do you want it 2 feet from the lot line so that you have some green to know it won't go to the neighbor? I talked to Vasily about it. He said right now we regulate drainage on a case-by-case basis, and we could probably continue to do this on a case-by-case. I also raised in here, and I will tell you, gentlemen, I was moving very quickly writing this packet, so I'm still learning. Against the house, it's a preference. Putting a sidewalk up against the house is a preference. You know, do you want a flower bed in between for aesthetics? Some people say, well, it should be up against the house and let it pitch away so you don't get seepage. My mom's mud jacked hers twice in 40 years. So either way you go, it depends on how it's going to settle out. So it's the side lot line is a stormwater issue. Up against the house would be an aesthetics issue. We don't require foundation landscaping in the ordinance. That would essentially put some green along the sidewalk if you chose to do it, and I totally leave that decision, you know, to your knowledge and wisdom. I just thought I would raise it to you.
Yeah, so do you have any thoughts on any of that?
I'd just ask for clarification on this. So, reading it such that the requirement that service walks be placed at least 2 feet from the interior side yard and not adjacent to a residential property. The 2
Not
feet...
adjacent to your neighbor. So if you're going to have it on the 5 foot.
Understood.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm just reading your verbatim text.
Okay.
Adjacent to a residential property, meaning the neighboring lot. Is the issue, or is the consideration the 2 feet? Is it a change from something to 2 feet?
No, it's not regulated at all.
Okay.
And I should say the only other regulation we have in the code regarding sidewalks is when they're parallel to the driveway, we require it to be a different material so that it doesn't just become a driveway extension to park another car.
So
that's already in the code.
Without this language, are residents currently allowed to essentially put a side yard up to their lot line, up to the neighboring lot line?
Yeah, they could put it anywhere.
Okay.
Yeah. And also, you know, we generally think about 3 foot wide sidewalks. Service walks sometimes are 2. They're just narrow paths. It's just to get yourself to your backyard.
Okay. Presumably then, if we currently allow service walks on side yards to be up to the neighboring lot line, we would have to grandfather those that currently exist.
Oh, good question. Yeah, you would.
If they exist up to the lot line with this change, we would have to grandfather the pre-existing ones.
If you chose to do it.
Correct.
Right. You might say to me, hey, that's not necessary, we're good. It's your choice. So.
Eric, what was your, you have that issue along the north side of your house, right?
Yes.
What was your recent experience with staff? Let me rephrase that. Because I don't want to put anything on staff or anything else.
No, yeah.
What was your experience generally with how that played out?
The existing service walk that we have running along the back end, they've got a 5.5 foot sort of setback between the building and between the house and the lot. We have a 27-inch walk that sort of is in there. It's offset from the house, so it's 6 inches from the property line. Because you come out of a stoop and then you step down to the walk. We were putting a patio on the west end so that we couldn't continue that line. That was not a service walk, so we were held off of the side yard setback of 6 feet. I mean, it was fine, I think. And so in this particular instance, this would be for a new development. Really, this would be somebody coming in, tearing down a lot, going to put a service walk, or something that they don't have one now. Let's assume that there's a house that doesn't have one and they want to put something. Okay, we're already 6 feet as our setback. We're not 5. We're building a new house. to dictate where it might fall within the 6, I think is, boy, yeah, I mean, I think we're splitting hairs a little bit on a certain level, because if we are doing a new development, then we're already going to be addressing stormwater sort of concerns from an engineering standpoint, talking about downspouts tying into this and any sort of, you know, detention sort of provisions, so we're not casting off the side, you know, onto our neighbors. I mean, that's a default sort of approach that's sort of dictated. So whether or not it's up against the lot or whether it's against the house and you've got a little buffer, I think I don't see it. I don't see the benefit of sort of establishing the standard.
I would agree.
Because by table 13.1, they're allowed in the side yard setback, correct? The service walk.
Yes.
They're permitted a service walk.
I have to check that encroachment. I think they are allowed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So whether they're
I
right
think
up against the
they-
house or
I
2 to 3
think
feet
they
off,
are. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk over
No,
you.
no.
I think they are. I think the change is here is actually changed the language to make it more specific
Very
to the
much so.
width. Yeah.
And its location to the property line. Now it's saying to give ourselves a 2-foot buffer between the sidewalk and the property line. That's what,
And I've seen that practice
Yeah,
in other towns,
exactly.
which is why I brought it up.
Yeah.
But if it hasn't been a concern here, then it hasn't been a concern.
right.
I don't think I
Yeah.
don't think I've ever heard anything about it up here at all.
No, we haven't up here. I think there was one a few years ago where someone needed a variation because it was like a connection between a between a new patio and a driveway, and it was interpreted that it wasn't a service walk, it was part of the patio, kind of like your situation, and they needed a variation because it was in the side yard. I think that's the only time I've heard it come up, but I don't know. You never know what staff sees on a daily basis unless they bring it to your attention.
Well, not necessarily, but I would assume that it is.
Yeah.
But there's a difference between it.
So do we want to move forward with the 2 that were discussed last year and dismiss the other 2 ideas?
I would say let's definitely move forward on the 2 that we've already heard, and then I don't know if you find the time to do a little research on whether or not that's an issue, or like how, I know you probably won't because you're busy, but I don't really have a strong opinion. I know we've got a few up here.
Yeah, the only thing that I could think of, if we want to address it and sort of establish a dimension that we're holding it off of the property line, would be because if somebody putting a fence up, right? I mean, if somebody has if somebody wants to put a fence that's not there and there's a walk right up to the property line, now what am I doing, right? So then I'm coring holes and I'm putting my fence, in a walk. So maybe, because I know that with driveways we have a minimum offset along a property line, I believe, like 6 inches or something. I think we have to keep some sort of a gap if we're having a drive adjacent to a property line.
Vasily told me that today. I
Yeah.
have to look at my notes.
Right. I believe we do. So that would be the only thing, is to give ourselves that, give residents that ability to put a fence in and facilitate that installation.
Yeah, and I would be
in a little bit of a zone, right? Call it a.
He said to me that the drive could be on the edge of the lot line.
Oh, it could. Okay.
Yeah, and he did indicate he feels, and he does most of these reviews.
Yeah.
That he is comfortable looking at it on a case-by-case space for drainage. So I guess I should rescind my suggestion to consider.
And my only thought about perimeter landscaping as well, personally, I'm a fan of perimeter landscaping. I'm always hesitant to tell residential users how they have to landscape single-family homes.
Because it could turn into a mess if the next one isn't a gardener.
Yeah. Yeah, or I mean, some people hate landscaping. I mean,
right.
And if you have, and you could get into a situation, you could fairly, like on my property, I have an old bungalow on a corner lot that's set back quite a bit from the side street. And I probably have less than 5 feet between my interior side lot line and my neighbor's driveway. So requiring both of those would probably put me in a situation where I would have to have a variation to install a service walk. Not that I have any intention of it. It doesn't go anywhere on that side of my house. But so it could potentially create the need for variations on, especially in like some of the older bungalows and that have odd
Right.
setbacks on corner lots. I wouldn't necessarily be against it. I would just want to know more before I did it, I guess.
So we'll chalk this up to
Yeah.
me being too new, and we'll drop those two ideas, at least for now.
Yeah, let's
You can do
that.
driveway
And I-
lot line.
All right.
We have the section on second accessory structures in the residential districts. That's what we were talking about.
Bless you.
The pergolas and gazebos, and I think we had pretty much consensus on that at the time. I don't think there was any question beyond, I know there was some language changes at our last meeting, so just we need to make sure all of that is captured.
So I've taken a really hard look at this one, and in furtherance of the past board meetings and what the majority of the trustees that have been voting ever which way have indicated what they're looking for. It may present an opportunity for us at the next meeting to take a very hard look at the definition of accessory structure, which is in the code. However, we also make reference to accessory building. And while the term building is in the code, for the municipal code, the term accessory building is not defined. So we may want to utilize staff's expertise on crafting very airtight definitions, because it seems as though this board is very concerned about airtight definitions.
Yeah, and I know that, to Consuelo, her interpretation of an accessory building was essentially something with 4 walls and a roof, a garage. An accessory structure could be a garage, but also included pergolas, screened porches, detached screen structures, things like that. So that may be some language that we need to just clarify.
Yeah, I'm actually a fan of the current definition of building as it's defined in the code, but the lack of a definition of accessory building is something that may be of concern. So if it's literally just the definition of building that is not the primary building on the lot, or something very much akin to that, that is a simple but effective definition, is possibly something that we should entertain at the next meeting.
I've seen incidental in use and typically supports that kind of language for accessory building. I noticed, I struggled a little bit with this definition for the item 5 as well, which I'll get into when we get there. So.
Yeah, and then, so the memo that you'll want to look at regarding this one, and probably all of these actually, is the memo is the omnibus memo that went to the village board, because there were, and I have the dates, I could forward
That's
them to
where
you.
I just blocked
Okay.
and copied these out of there.
Yeah.
I think I found the right memo, but yeah, I will appreciate
Yeah, so they
your
were in
help.
the village board packet,
Mhm.
and because those did incorporate some changes that were made in the second meeting we held on
Oh.
these.
Okay. I will tell you on the next page at the top, Vasily and I talked about if it's going to exceed 140, we need a max. We're at 140 square feet now, which is an odd size at 10 by 14 feet, because 12 by 12 is 144 feet. And he thought 200 square feet and must meet lot coverage. Did you guys talk about that?
That's something you may want to check
Okay.
the memo on, because I believe we might have moved to a percentage.
Okay.
I thought so too.
Like the non-residential where it's 1% a lot?
We may have. I can't say for sure, but there was some back and forth on what the size should be, and I think part of the reason that was in there was that Consuela felt that the 140 was not large enough for a number of contemporary like gazebos and pergolas and some of those.
So I might have blocked and copied from the wrong memo. I
Yeah.
apologize if so.
No,
Yeah.
those, because of the way those memos needed to be constructed to show redlining, some of them were really complex. So I understand where you're coming from.
I also talked with Vasily, if I may jump in, that we're seeing the height is up, is 10 feet, and we're seeing a lot of the newer stuff at 12 feet height. So if you want to consider allowing a taller pergola or gazebo as well.
And those are, I guess you'd call them out of box.
Prefab.
Prefab stuff,
Prefab,
that's standard height of all of them.
Yeah, for that type of structure, I wouldn't be adverse to that necessarily.
I would concur with going with the standard of whatever the prefab standard is.
Okay.
All right.
Hate to have to buy something new and cut it down.
So the fee in lieu of public parking in certain.
Can I move to 5 first?
Yes,
and then
let's.
get into
Yes,
that?
that's because they're kind of related.
Yeah, so 5, if I make a mistake, I'm the first one to tell you. And Vasily and I sat down and looked. This is, I had a property owner come in and ask me about this, and so that's why I put this on here. She lives here in Illinois in Kenilworth, and as you could see, she wants to put a deck on, but she can't in the rear of her house because she's got this driveway here. If you look up on the screen, and because of how her garage is situated, you know, the only place for her to put a deck onto her house is here. She's already has landscaping and a fence. I don't think it will, if this were to come as a special use, I could recommend approval hands down. It's a 92-foot width lot in a 50-foot width district. She's not going to impact her neighbor, you know, from the view that zoning exists to protect you know, your rights from your neighbors. But then I got into looking at the definition of structure building and structure accessories, and I'm like, could she put it in that yard anyways, even if she met the setback? Because when you look at the code, this is how it reads for obstructions, but I started thinking it's not even an obstruction if she's meeting the setback. So maybe it's a non-issue and we can just tell her to come in for building permit. The other thing is, when I looked first at this, I was thinking, oh my gosh, there's a whole row of triangular lots. Maybe there's more than one. Let's just look at a text amendment. Vasily and I today went lot by lot, and honestly, we might have found maybe one more that matched. So this is the anomaly house, we think.
Yeah, we did actually have one before us, and I had forgotten about this. What, about 2 years or so ago? In the southeast part of town, right around the corner from Commissioner Hofstra here.
The
where,
swimming pool on the side.
That actually was very similar to this, and they came in for a variation because they wanted to put a pool in the side yard. They were going to install fence and do all the things but Yes, it was a side yard encroachment of a pool and the deck to go with the pool. And that was a variation that we processed.
So in this one, my thought was I'd have to talk to the village attorney, but from your knowledge, which is considerable up here, if she does that deck and it doesn't encroach in, if it's set back enough and not in the yard, do you think she can do this without a special use? I don't know the answer.
I think I would interpret the code that way.
Could you put your cursor over the area of the proposed deck?
If I can find my cursor. There it is.
Yeah, so they just wanted it to the north end
Yeah.
of the house.
And she has also discussed a hot tub. I don't know if that changes the perception, but the deck at a minimum.
But it's fenced on the north?
There's a chain link fence. Gosh, where did it go again?
Oh, right, because they're a corner, so they wouldn't be able
There's
to...
arborvitaes here and here already in an L shape, and then there's a fence here.
So if it's not actually in the side yard, it's not a side yard encroachment, correct?
I looked at that today. It's a corner lot, and in the corner lot definition is at the narrowest. So the Illinois side, this western side, is considered the front yard, and this is considered a street yard.
Right.
It's not an exterior side yard, it's a street yard.
15 feet.
Yeah, I think so. I printed out the code. We can look it up if you want.
Yeah.
But
It would be 15 feet, yeah.
So my feeling coming into the meeting today was I was going to tell you I jumped too quickly. I needed to talk to the village attorney, but I'll take your thoughts on it, pretty please.
I mean, if this individual, this homeowner is proposing a deck with a hot tub, I would also advise them to come in for some type of variance to put in a taller fence if they're doing that with their, the exposed side being on, what's that, Kenilworth? Yeah, on Kenilworth.
Do we allow a privacy fence on the edge of a deck? I've seen that where you can put a wall on the side of your deck.
I'm going to guess our code is probably silent on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you said chain link, so, and I'm thinking
There's chain link.
side yard, we don't allow wood or paneling. I think
We would allow. I think we allow 4-foot fence on street side yard.
Yeah,
Right,
it's
but
not real tall.
That's what I'm saying. For taller, if they're going to
Yeah.
have a hot tub right there, I
Mhm.
would personally want a taller fence than 4 feet. If I'm doing a hot tub right there.
Think you're allowed 8 foot?
Not on the street.
Street side, you can't. Off a deck though.
Oh, off of a deck?
Off a deck. You're talking for like a privacy, for like a hot tub?
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, so I think that's probably not
I think
an amendment that's necessary. And I
Right.
think I'd have to, look at the code a little closer, but I think as long as it's not in the side yard, it's not in the setback, then it's not encroachment. And I would say this might actually be a case where what initially looked like a disadvantage for the property owner is an advantage. Because if that house was set in the middle of the lot, they still probably couldn't put a deck on the south side because of the setback. Or maybe they could. But they have the ability to put a deck on that side, where if it was closer to the street, they wouldn't have the space to do it. So,
If I remember the property correctly, I actually think last year they actually had a pool there.
I think she said so.
Yes, they had a pool there
Yeah.
last year.
all right. So yeah, I'd say work with the applicant on that.
Okay.
But if it looks like they need some sort of relief, then that needs to happen. But I don't. It's probably not worth amending an ordinance again without being completely sure.
Okay, I agree. Okay, so the next element I put on here is we're starting to see development downtown, and we're seeing some interest in variances to require parking. I know you've already processed one at 325, and I have another one. We've received an application this week for a small coffee shop that wants to go on Villa. But regardless of that, taking the concept that parking is not free, someone has to pay for it. if it's the applicant or the village. I've worked with the practice of fee in lieu. We already do fee in lieu for stormwater and for best management practices, 2 types of stormwater management. And so if you take the view that parking is also a utility, it's a commodity. Geneva, Naperville, Westmont are 3 that I know of that do parking fee in lieu. And they vary, the towns vary. But the concept is if you cannot provide the parking that the code would require for you, you would pay a fee in lieu of the parking space. The municipality would then use that in a segregated fund to pay for construction, maintenance, operation of public parking, and it's within a geographic area. All of those 3 towns I referenced set their fee amount differently. Geneva did it based on the cost of a surface lot space. Naperville did it based, I believe, on the cost of a parking garage space. And Westmont just has a cash amount, like $500 per space. So there's varying ways that you could do it. But wanted to see, I brought it up to the development team and they were interested in getting your read on it to see if it's something you want us to pursue as staff.
The fee is per parking spot that they would request a variance for?
For whatever above they couldn't meet. And it varies a little bit with each town. But you said a geographic area. Geneva and Naperville both have an SSA in place where it is. So they're managing that district. I did not look into whether they're levying another SSA overlay tax on the district or not. I don't remember in Geneva, and I should because I worked there for 7 years. But you set the geographic area, and if you can't provide it within 350 feet, through shared arrangement with another property owner or in front of your own business, you have the option to fee in lieu. And both the Naperville and the Geneva one, I believe, say when it triggers when a change of use comes in for a new a building. And you can't reduce the spaces that were there is a concept that's found in these ordinances. And it's an incremental above what's there already. It's not that you would pay the fee for everything. So you'd have to establish what was there existing. I could pull up code excerpts for you at a later meeting if you're interested.
Okay, so I think it would be worth exploring. I guess the question is, would this be a replacement essentially for a parking variation, or would it be an addition to a parking variation?
The replacement for the variation. Yeah, you get the variation, but you have to pay for the
right, but
the
you
space.
would still have to go through the process
you have to request
of getting
it.
the variation.
Yeah, you request it.
It would be a condition on the variation.
Okay. That's what I wanted to clarify.
That's my interpretation.
So it's not a replacement of the variation process.
Is it a one-time fee, or do you pay it annually?
It was a one-time in Geneva. I believe it's a one-time in all of them. But that's a good question. Let me look to see if it's administered at staff level, because flat out it just doesn't meet the code, so here's your fee, or if it's through a requesting board. I'll check into that. Because in Geneva, they were tending to happen with PUDs, so it was part of the request for the PUD.
Right.
And I don't know how Naperville did it, or does it, I should say.
Because obviously we wouldn't want to propose something that would essentially price out businesses from requesting variations as this is a condition, but the financial incentive would be for the petitioner to very thoroughly look at the new construction versus the parking requirements based on occupancy to determine, can I make this work without the variation, or am I coming in with the variation with a financial implication on the variation itself?
Right. And so and you're saying here with new development, you wouldn't be able to reduce
new use, triggering parking requirements because it's a new use or new development.
Yeah. Would not be able to reduce parking that way. Is that correct? Is that how I'm reading this?
What I meant to write there was new development which would trigger parking requirements may not
Okay.
reduce the existing number of spaces. The reducing should be reduce. Here's the Westmont one though. I do have like that code here in front of me. Theirs is different than the Geneva and Naperville approach. They call it cash in lieu fee when the application of the off-street parking regulations results in a requirement of not more than 3 spaces. Such parking spaces need not be required but in one district, if you're asking for a waiver of, and I'm paraphrasing, if you're asking for a waiver of 3 or less, it's $500 flat fee. If it's 4 to 10, it's $250 per space. So theirs is kind of nominal.
Yeah.
Geneva's was 10,000
I was going to say $10,000 for surface and typically
Mhm.
20 for garage or close to it.
Yeah, the Naperville one was much higher. Yeah.
Yeah, it's usually
So
15 to
I thought
20
this was
for
an
garage.
interesting approach for Westmont, but it starts to create a fund to maintain our downtown parking assets.
Yeah, sure. Just yeah, if you could just state your name and address for the record and. Yep.
Angie Brojek. I own Pioneer Garden at 118 South Villa. I know I've been up here talking about parking a lot, and I'm not against this necessarily, but my question is, so if somebody pays a fee, then where is the parking generated to cover those spaces that they won't have then? You know what I mean? Like, if all of a sudden there's businesses that are like, oh, I'll pay $500,000 or $10,000 or whatever for a spot, or 3 spots or whatever, but there's still not enough parking spots.
Right, and that's
to begin with, then where does the money go? And then what about the private people? That's where everyone will just park anyway.
Right, and
that's the only.
And I guess the theory is like
how do you generate more parking?
Right, when you're talking about a fee of like 10,000 or 20,000, we're talking about construction costs.
Right.
Which then you really are talking about the ability to, reimagine your street parking or
save it up to build that deck.
Purchase land
Yeah.
or.
But there's not the land. I mean, on Villa anyway, and this is only about Villa. The rest of the town is different, but the land is not there.
Yeah.
That's the issue.
And then the other issue is obviously the maintenance of the parking. But I do understand that concern, so it's something we'd have to look at in that
It's
regard.
just, that's what I wonder, because I get it, and I understand that not everybody needs all the parking, but then they have to park somewhere. So.
Yeah. Agreed. Thanks for that comment.
Yeah, I do appreciate you throwing in language to make sure that it would not reduce the existing number of spaces. Because by no means do I want a change in use or a new developer, or really just be change in use at this point, to be able to essentially pay out to reduce the already existing number of spaces for that property.
Which is what happens a lot with stormwater management in DuPage.
Right.
Money goes to the county and.
But I think it does have
That's
the
it.
opportunity. It does have the opportunity to create potentially recurring revenue. If you said it's a certain fee annually, then that kind of goes into a fund that can be used. For example, as Angie mentioned with the parking on Villa, a couple of years ago, the village actually expanded the parking over by the Historical Society in that area, and the village absorbed the cost of that to do that work.
Right.
And if what you're describing, those funds could be used to expand and maintain parking like that.
Yes, and like the parking lot along by the pavilion that serves a lot of the businesses on the south end of Villa, someone has to pave that. And
And I recognize we're a smaller business district than these other towns.
Right.
So it might not generate that much revenue in the long run, but I do foresee you continuing to get a stream of requests for parking variances.
Yeah, and that's
You just say yes, what do you do?
And I mean, what is really, this is something that we've talked about in the past, like what is the alternate to that? The alternate to that is requiring on-site parking, which destroys the character of those neighborhoods.
After you tear down enough buildings, there's no reason to go downtown. It's the classic dilemma in downtown development.
Right.
Yeah,
And
we've got mass open spaces just behind Villa. Yeah.
1960s, early 1970s Evanston, just a little planning history, is the prime example of how that didn't work. They tore down so much of their downtown to build parking to try to save their downtown from users fleeing to the regional malls. And then fast forward to 1995, 2000, they're reclaiming that land and building it up with, you know, multi-story buildings, because that's how you generate critical mass, is how you generate a downtown, not surface parking. So, okay.
So should we look at it?
I think it's worth exploring.
And any thoughts on what that would look like that you'd be more amenable to seeing?
Given the... I'm always hesitant to make people jump through more hoops than they need to, but given the scarcity of parking and the relative nature of our, you know, relatively small nature of our downtowns, I still think it needs to be attached to either a variation process or some other, if not a variation process, some process whereby
public input
there is a
required.
number of
Yeah.
yes,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, because if you have a small user, like you can envision, say a use that's currently a medical office building that requires 4 parking spaces. And it's a ground floor space, maybe it's a second floor space, and they want to redevelop it as, not redevelop it, but change it to a restaurant use. And now they're required to have 20 spaces, not 5. If they can just buy 15 without going through everything, that might actually put a, or without at least being reviewed, that might put a strain on, I don't know. Once we have that 100 parking spaces, we'll see. But short term, I think you would need to be tied to something personally. But I'd be worth.
Do you have any ideas working there every day?
But yeah, seeing how other communities do it would be really
I
helpful.
think the like you just mentioned, I think the 100 public spaces will help a lot. Having the before you got here, Ellen, a lot of this was before the AK mulch went away, and now we have that lot there. So and people use that. That helps a lot. But now that that'll be under construction for a year or two or whatever. So that'll all be gone. But then once the 100 spaces are there, I think that'll help. I think really when that was the other reason I came tonight, is because I wanted to see that presentation. And I think one of you suggested having that pedestrians could walk out. I think they have to do that.
Yeah.
Because there's no way anyone's going to come off of Wildwood and then go all, like if you parked all the way and then have to walk back out all the way onto Wildwood.
That was one of staff's comments, actually. We met on it.
You have, because all the businesses are on that south side of the of the thing. So I think that will help a lot with that. But the other thing too to remember is that the Lions development is also keeps saying, because I've seen some of their presentations too, and they keep saying they're counting on the 100 spaces as well, that they're counting on using those for that development as well. So then you have a lot more, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's no perfect answer. I just wanted to bring it up that if, like you're saying, if you suddenly need 15 spaces, oh, I'll buy them. Well, that's fine. You could pay for them, but if they're not there,
Is there no place to replace them with?
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Any other input on the text amendments, Ellen?
I think I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah. I have about 6 more. I don't know if I'll have time to get them to you in my time here. So the list has been growing. Okay.
All right. Well, don't see anybody here I don't think, looking to speak on 9 agenda items at 10:30, 10:40. So do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So
Second?
moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.